Good morning all and welcome to the monthly ordinary meeting of Council for the 20th of July, and I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for your attendance, to councillors and staff and anyone who's watching us via live stream. We've got Councillor Jones online, so we don't have any leave of absence or apologies today, and I'd just now like to open the meeting with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Okay, Councillor Duff, would you undertake the recognition of our traditional owners, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Declarations of conflict of interest. Anybody? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you. Just in relation to items, and just to be noted, but I want the chambers and the public to be aware, in items 13.3, 4, 5 and 6 in relation to on pages 334 to 337, all relative to foot and mouth disease. I just want to let it be known that my stance on this as a primary producer as well as a councillor, be noted that there is times where I will be vocal about this, so whether there's a conflict of interest derived from that, I would like the chamber to note that I've mentioned this. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor. We will note that you have no greater interest than any other livestock producer, obviously many thousands across our country, so thank you for that. Yeah. Anything else, councillors? Yeah, I don't think councillors, I think a number of you have cattle. Well, certainly there are 3 councillors. Councillor Jones has cattle. No greater conflict than any other livestock producer, so nothing to be concerned about there, but thanks for raising it nonetheless. Yeah, thank you, councillors. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the first item is 6.1. It's a petition from the Proston Round Table in relation to Albina Sculpture Plan. We have that at page 6, whereby the recommendation is that the petition be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer to determine the appropriate action and a report be brought back to Council. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff. A seconder? Councillor Potter. Thank you. Any speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.2 is a petition in relation to the state of roads, drainage and curb and channeling in Tingura and the state of the Tingura Public Hall. We'll go to 12 on the agenda, whereby it's recommended that the petition regarding the state of roads, lack of proper drainage and curb and channeling in Tingura and the state of the Tingura Public Hall be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer to determine the appropriate action and a report be brought back to Council. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Second, Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It certainly was wonderful to go and have a look at this while we were on the bus trip. I just had a couple of questions in relation to this project, perhaps for General Manager Lowe. Just in relation to the curb and channeling in Tingura, my questions are, has there been any work done to actually scope or understand the costs of that project? And would the project qualify for an LRCI funding allocation? They're my 2 questions.
Thank you, General Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. No, at this point in time, there is no scope done on the curb and channel, so we'll basically be starting from scratch to get up estimates, etc., for that. And as far as the LRCI funding goes, I'd have to take that on notice. I'm not real sure.
Thank you. General Manager O'May, did you want to add anything in terms of the funding source?
Yeah, through the chair. I believe it would be the LRCI is quite broad in its application as far as community infrastructure or transport. So, yeah, I think that would be eligible for the funding, but yeah, again, would need to be scoped up and just confirm what the project consisted of.
Thank you, Councillor.
And can anything, thank you for that. I do intend to move a motion after this. Can anything be done under flood recovery or betterment funding in relation to the scouring or the issues with water and drainage in Tingura is my question for Manager Lowe.
Thank you, General Manager.
Through you, Mayor, it's my understanding, Councillor, that yes, we have got some stuff on flood damage recovery works. The scouring, I take it the one you're referring to is down the edge of the road. A lot of that is actually caused by the driveways. So the driveways are actually forcing the water out onto the edge of the road. And then once it gets onto the road, the shoulder is a little bit high. So we're intent on cutting those shoulders down, as we discussed on site. That will get the water back into the water table, which will then correspondingly reduce the scouring along the road edge. If that helps.
Thank you, General Manager. Further speakers? Okay, we'll get this one received. Those go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move a motion that council scope the curb and channeling project in Tingura and report back to an upcoming standing committee, infrastructure standing committee meeting, to the next, sorry, oh, it's probably going to be hard, to the next infrastructure standing committee meeting with the estimated costs of delivering such.
Councillor, just in terms of timing, September Standing Committee meeting? Would that be?
I'm thinking August, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, just in that fact, we're only a couple of weeks away, aren't we? Will that give you enough time, General Manager, do you think?
Through you, Mayor, I think that would be cutting it very short. And can I also get clarification as which streets that we're looking to curb and channel?
Yep, the streets that were included in the petition here, so due to various issues, Muller Street, Magnusson's Drive, Hill Street, Home Street.
General Manager, in terms of your resource, available resources, time frame to provide a report with those scoping and costing?
Come on.
Oh, through you, Mayor. Yes, I'd be more comfortable to the standing committee after next, if that's all right, because yeah, we have got a lot of staff away at the moment, and my planning guys are pretty short on the ground at the moment.
Yes, September is fine.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll seek a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff, thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My intent for this motion is purely just to act on the feedback that we've been given from the Tingura community. I would really like to understand the estimated costs of installing curb and channeling on the streets that we did have a look at though on the day of the bus trip, and certainly around Tingura. I can see it's been a long-standing issue in the community, and certainly the fact that we've had a 99% response to the petition that has been tabled here, 126 signatures, demonstrates that. It is in my mind that to deliver on a project like this, we really do, in the current environment, need to have a good idea of the scope and the costs. And I certainly think it is a priority for this council, and one that we do need to consider carefully. So my purpose for this motion is, with council's support, to, I guess, investigate the costs so that we can secure appropriate budget to deliver these works for the people of Tingura. And I am mindful that that could be in a staged process over many years, or it could be through a grant funding bucket like the LRCI funding. So I'm really passionate about this project for the Tingura community. Really enjoyed meeting with them that day on the street, and can see that with the 4 consecutive rain events that we have had, it's been a significant issue for the people of Tingura. and it would be good to see us as a council work toward a solution. So I commend this motion to the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further speakers, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to bring to Chamber's attention, and thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, fully supportive. There was a motion moved 2022/597 by Councillor Potter and seconded by myself, and you've heard me in this chamber say about Tingura drainage and channelling some work there over the past couple of years. But in that resolution, it states that Council start the process of community engagement and consultation for the following projects, with a view to getting scoping completed and shovel-ready for grants and/or funding from cash. There's approximately 10, 12 dot points there, and I'd just like to note that Tingura is in that resolution, so we do have something in the system with this, and I thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, for bringing it further forward. But I think that was moved in the June, prior to the budget, in the June meeting. I just don't have a date on it, apologise, but that's the resolution number anyway. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. This will just give us some more specific indication of the work to be done as well as the time frame. So thank you. Okay, further speakers? Okay, we ready to go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on the 24th of June, 2022 at 24. It's recommended that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 24th of June be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Minutes of the special council meeting held on the 8th of July 2022. They contain a 65. And the recommendation is that the minutes of a special council meeting held on 8 July 2022 be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.3, minutes of the Corporate Risk and Audit Advisory Committee meeting held on the 9th of June 2022. Those minutes are at 122. Recommendation there is that the minutes of the Corporate Risk and Advisory and Audit Advisory Committee meeting held on the 9th of June 2022 be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
I just wanted to acknowledge the contributions of our independent panel members in participating in this meeting that we did have. It was a really thorough overlook over a number of key priority risk areas for council, and I did certainly have the pleasure of chairing that meeting, Mr Mayor, in your absence. I just wanted to acknowledge the work that the team have put into actually developing our corporate risk and audit advisory committee. As I learned at the ALGA conference, we are the envy of many councils, that the work that is happening is definitely state of the art, and that many councils, particularly in rural and regional areas like ours, are grappling with putting together advisory committees like we have. So Manager Susan, if you could pass on our thanks to your staff and your team. I know a lot of time and effort goes into the development of the meeting agendas. The information we were given was just amazing. You'd certainly been very thorough and very open and transparent with the operations of council, and to have our independent panel members look at us through a very, with a fine tooth comb and really question and challenge our operations, and to be unable to find anything of concern was really wonderful. So thank you just for the efforts of your team over the past 12 months in developing that committee and for the meeting that we had.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you want to add anything further, Madam Acting CEO? No, thank you. Okay. Right, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, Council. 8.1 is the business outstanding table for the ordinary council meetings. That's at 1:33, and recommendation is there that the business outstanding table for the ordinary council meeting be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Duff. Councillor Henson. Councillor? Erkins, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Does this mean that we're just doing them all in one or as one, or are we going through them?
Yeah, so you'll have one opportunity to speak. So if you have multiple items to address, then you can raise those while you have the floor. But we don't necessarily work through every single item. So you can raise those items about which you may have questions or concerns.
As we go through, or just all together?
Yeah, you can raise, so you have the floor
Okay.
for 5 minutes. So you raise the items that you're concerned about. Thank you.
Okay. So there was just a couple of things. I'd just like to know what happened with them. They're there, so we talked about putting up, we're having the auction, and then we talked about council had some items for sale, and we're going to offer them to some community groups. I wonder where we were. Is that happening? Yeah. The there was one about the council providing kind support in supply and delivery of the decomposed granite from the Gordon Brook mine site for use to the development on the mountain bike skills park. What happened? Some of them I wasn't here for, so I don't really know what they're about. I'd just like to know what happened with them. So what happened on that? On the Visitor Information Centre. I'm not sure, am I in the right spot?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Yeah, continue.
The Visitor Information section, is there going to be further discussion on that? There were different things came out of it, and I just wanted to know whether we're going to be discussing that further, and when are we going to be discussing that further. Was some of the things that were on the information that was given to us on the report that was done. I didn't agree with some of that information that came back, and I'd like the opportunity to discuss that. The lawnmowers, have we got the new lawnmowers in yet? So are they going to be offered to the community groups? At a NAPTA meeting, they were asking when they were going to get their money from the application that they had made. The rail trail, there was a thing on the rail trail. My understanding was on the rail trail that we were actually handing over management of the rail trail to the rail trail group so that they were able to apply for grants in their own right. So I just wanted to know what had happened on that. The St John's Lutheran School I think the CEO is going to meet with the school to see what was happening there. Has that happened? The biosecurity for the spraying, we're going to split that up into different groups, different contracts. Did that happen, and have we had any local contractors apply for that? I think I've got ticks on. I asked at one stage about a discount for local residents for accommodation at the local council-owned dam accommodation during off-peak. Has that been furthered? Do we do anything about that? Has that been? I asked about, there were some flags that we had in Nanango that went on those poles. I wondered whether anyone had found those. And I think that's probably all the questions I had.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll lead us in working through these one at a time, General Manager, so that we can put some order to this. First of all, the public auction of the furniture, surplus furniture items. Can we address that one first? Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. So the facilities group are looking at running that through the community groups first. So they're just organising that process. So it would go to the community groups first prior to releasing that. So yeah, it is just that's something that they're working on now, but it hasn't progressed further. But that is the plan.
Yes, so we'll go one at a
time.
time. So that's being progressed, the sale of those. So they were offered to community groups, and then surplus items were to be auctioned. Just to clarify, was that the arrangement?
Yeah, they haven't been gone out yet, but that is the idea, is that they be offered through the community groups first.
Thank you, General Manager. The proposal to provide in-kind support to the mountain bike club at Gordon Brook in relation to supply of granite.
Through the chair, that one has been resolved, so that was completed. It just hasn't been ticked off. And I did notice this when we re-rent the agenda, that no one had updated it as being completed, but yeah, that had been completed a while ago now.
Thank you, General Manager. Welcome, Acting General Manager Kerry. Age should never be a barrier to recognition of capability and promotion. So congratulations on you acting in the role. Yeah. Thank you for giving that opportunity, Madam Acting CEO. Lawnmowers, where are we at with that?
I was just going to mention on that DECO one, because I think how we missed it, it was for budget considerations, but we actually did do it through in-kind through the current year, so that's why it probably wasn't. But that one's on. The Visitor Information Centre. So there's a workshop.
Sorry, the Visitor Information Centre. Sorry, yep.
Visitor Information Centre. So there's workshop 3rd of August. That's programmed in for that. That should be in your councillors' calendars to address that one.
Thank you. And the lawnmower expressions of interest.
The lawnmower expression of interest. So they're to go out in conjunction with the community grants, which happens in August. So that'll sort of run in keep with those projects. All of the people who had written in and expressed of interest were advised that we would be running a process through in conjunction with the community grants round, which will be opening in August.
And have we received the new mowers so that the old ones will be available at that time? Do we know, Madam?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we haven't received the new mowers yet, and last time I heard there was another 2 to be delivered in October. So they're still pushing them back.
So we'll do the assessment process, but then the delivery may be delayed. Machinery, of course, very slow to get access to these days, yeah. Okay, the $3,000 community grant for NATA.
Yeah, NATA. So I'll just have to follow up the payment of that one. So this one was, we were just giving the $3,000 donation through the community grants, and the in-kind stuff will just happen over the course of the year. So that'll be, we were committing to provide in-kind support for the celebrations.
So the NATA funds, General Manager, have been approved. It's a process now of organising the disbursement of the funds. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just not sure where we're at with that. So I'm assuming we haven't ticked it off,
Yes.
so we probably just haven't progressed into paying it, and if they're still querying it.
Before we seek comment from you in relation to the rail trail and the South Ballot Rail Trail Users Association, just to clarify there, Councillor Ekins, so the resolution was had a number of elements to it, but initially it was to engage with the Rail Trail Users Association, and in doing so, look at options around the further development of the rail trail and working with them on that. So at this stage, Council has not resolved to enter into any agreements or leases or tenure arrangements with the rail trail. At this stage, the resolution was simply to commence the process of engagement, General Manager. So I just want to clarify that for the community. But further to that, General Manager, any progress in that one?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, so we have actually met with representatives of the South Burnett Rail Trail User Association, and the focus was really on putting an expression of interest in for disaster recovery funding for repairs to the rail trail. So we met and we touched all of these points with the association at that time. But the key focus was trying to identify and get that grant funding application submitted, which was done in, I think it was 8th of July or something. It was submitted. We did breach the issue of ownership and that, but it certainly was something that they weren't wanting to jump on straight away, because there was a fair bit to work out through there and just the obligations and responsibilities of both parties. We did reach out to Gympie Regional Council, just trying to get a contact there to try start the discussions around a regional approach. Gympie, probably similar to us, running around chasing their tails with the flood damage at the moment and trying to get assessments, particularly even on the rail trail. So we did have those initial meetings and have had flagged this resolution with the group. But yeah, the focus was just getting that funding EOI completed and making sure we were had the feedback of the spots that were impacted from them.
Yeah, Jim, just thank you. I just refer to the resolution on that just for clarity. It is at page 143, whereby Council resolved that we would complete the following action by 30 September. So 30 September was the target date to 1, commence consultation with the South Burnett Rail Trail Users Association and community stakeholders with a view to entering into a suitable management and/or tender arrangement. 2, partner with the association to undertake community engagement with a view to considering naming options. 3, scope and cost a rail trail development study, similar to that done by BVRT. 4, contact a series of stakeholders in relation to possible formation of an interregional rail trail advisory group, and that was looking at our neighbouring councils as well as BVRT, SBRC, UA, and any other community or government organisation. So anyone that was wondering, that was the nature of the resolution. 30 September is the target date. So we'll leave that with you, General Manager O'May. Thank you. St John's School.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, so this one we still need to catch up with the school. So this one was basically put on hold over the school holidays. So they're back at school last week. So we will just touch base. But yeah, that hasn't occurred yet. So we'll organise a meeting in the near future.
Thank you, General Manager. And biosecurity contracts.
Yeah, so biosecurity tender. So the current tender runs through till December this year. So that will be. So there hasn't been any action taken on that one. That'll be over the course of the next sort of 3 to 4 months, I suppose. We'll get that rolled out, but the intention is to separate it. We currently have. We're just recruiting for positions in that area at the moment to take that one forward. But yeah, it isn't due till the end of the year. The actual current tender runs to.
Just extending beyond the table here, there's a couple of other issues Council did raise. Consideration of discounts for local people using our dam facilities for bookings for accommodation. I'd imagine that would be a fees and charges discussion that could be considered.
Yeah, so that will come back through. I think we've got a question on noted on that to come back through a standing committee. So
Future standing committee, thank you.
Can come back.
And flags at Menango.
And so so the guy did find the flags. They are sort of beyond their use by date. I think that they are quite aged, and I think there was discussions around with the new streetscape over there. It was very difficult to, in the main street, install them, and it was costly for the you've got the tree service or cherry pickers to put them up. So yeah, they haven't been up for a number of years. So it is something that we would need to look at how, if we were doing something, to how we do go forward.
Thank you, General Manager. So we're still with you, Councillor Erkins. You've got another minute left. Thank you.
Okay, I've got bad news for you then on that school. NAPTA and Heritage have actually had some new flags prepared for the 175-year celebrations that they'd like to go up on those flag poles. Those poles were actually done after they were part of the streetscape. So they would like them to be put up then. And just quickly to let Council know that with NAPTA's 175 years, it looks like their main festival is going to be combined with the extravaganza type performance that they were looking at doing on Australia Day. That is actually going to be all done together with their festival, and it looks like it's going to be, tentatively they're looking at doing that at the showgrounds. So thank you. I'm sorry for wasting time, but there's a lot of those things I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Certainly not a waste of time, and that's the purpose of having the table, is to work through it and give Council an update as to the progress. Any further speakers? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.1, LGAQ 126th Annual Conference Motion Request. Go to 165 for that. And if everyone can see, as presented on screen, the recommendation there, which is that South Bennett Regional Council resolves to submit the following motions to the 2022 Local Government Association of Queensland Annual Conference. They're as presented, items there, Bree, A through to H, is it? Scroll down. Sorry, A through to H, and then we've got 1, 2 and 3. So, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to certainly move this motion and amend it to include the 3 following motions.
We'll do, Breeze. We'll actually take that as the motion, so that we won't be amended as such. We can just add them down the bottom as the original motion. Thank you.
So I'll read them for you. That the state government seek a suitable decommissioning bond to be held in trust for the eventual rehabilitation of renewable energy sites. Sorry, Bree, should be sites. And that this condition be met prior to commencement of any construction. The bond will not be discharged without consultation with the relevant council. That the state government, next point, that the state government ensure developers of energy projects are to demonstrate authentic community engagement that seeks to actively involve community members in the design and decision-making process of new developments. This includes liaising with council as to appropriate sites and discussions occurring in the community. And the final point is that the state government seeks a community contribution fee to be paid by the developers of energy projects to provide a community benefit contribution to a common fund established and solely managed by the individual councils. This community benefit contribution would be in the region, would be in the, can we get rid of region? Sorry, Bree, that's a typo. In the proximity of 1.5% of the build cost of the project.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll take that as moved. Do we have a seconder? Seconder? Yep. Thanks, Councillor Potter. We'll go to you, Councillor Shoemaker, to speak. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this is a wonderful opportunity. I did attend last year the LGAQ annual conference with a number of my colleagues and found it a wonderful learning opportunity as always. But in terms of advocating for the issues that matter for our community, we really absolutely need to use these platforms and we need to be at the table. I have had a number of conversations in our community in relation to renewable energy projects, and that includes both solar and wind. And I do think we need to look at the state government for some more clear guidelines and a surety for communities like ours that they're going to support us in this transition. Because by all means, I think it's our region, we want to maximise the opportunities of projects like these. We absolutely need local buy, we need local skills, we need new industry. I'm not disputing any of that. And I learned a lot from the Western Downs, who are certainly doing some wonderful work in ensuring that happens in their community. I guess what we're seeking is leadership from the state government, that they're actually going to look at communities like ours during the transition and the disruption that a community like ours faces, and they're going to help us, and they're going to be here, and they're going to recognise council as an effective delivery partner for the production, the development of some of these sites. And I guess that's what my enormous concern is for our community, is that these things are happening so quickly. The state government has a clear target of 50% renewables by 2030. And for communities like ours, that means enormous change is going to happen very quickly. And I guess what I've seen and what I've heard from our community is that we want to be at the table, that we need to have grown-up conversations that include everything we need to know about a project, and that we need to have an opportunity to contribute feedback and to negotiate. Some project proponents, I think, are wonderful in doing this and are really punching above their weight in terms of meeting the needs of the guidelines. But it's still not regulated that you need to talk to your local council or your local community in the development of a renewable energy project, and that is an enormous concern for a region like ours. I think the LGAQ conference is a wonderful opportunity to once again, I know we've put forward many motions before, but once again bang the can for the people of our region. And I know in the conversations I've had with other councils over the last coming months that many feel the same way. We absolutely want to support this, but not at the cost of our community, and we need to work together in an open, transparent and accountable way, and I'd love to see the state government show some leadership with regards to some of these things. I do think the decommissioning bond is very important in terms of that longevity. I've come from mining where you start planning a mining project at the end of the project. And so I want to see renewable energy projects actually come forward with their plans for decommissioning. What will that actually mean for our community? I also want to see authentic community engagement. I want to see people tell it as it is. No room for grey here in our region. And the final thing is absolutely that community contribution fee. There's going to be enormous change in our region over the coming years, and our councils need to be able to provide housing, livability outcomes, support our region to prosper in these times. So I actually think we need to hold these project proponents to account in terms of paying some sort of fee to help us deliver on the needs of our community through our council activities. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly commend all of these motions to the chamber. I think they're wonderful, and I think it shows again that South Burnett really is listening to its community and trying to advocate for better outcomes.
Thank you, Councillor. And just in summarising then, for those that may be viewing today's meeting, Council is given the opportunity each year to nominate motions that would go to the LGAQ conference. Council would have the opportunity at the conference to speak to those motions, and then they're voted on by the members. And if they're passed, then those motions will then be acted upon and acted by the LGAQ. And with Councillor Shoemaker's 3 items there, we have those listed on the screen. But in summary, advocating for more funding for domestic violence in rural, regional and remote communities, amending the wind farm Code 23 and solar farm code guidelines to regulate broader community consultation and social licensing, calling on the state government to increase the RMPC funding, which is the DTMR managed funding for our state road network in rural regional councils, invest in backing the LGAQ's housing action plan in terms of affordable housing, investing in core infrastructure that is impeding growth in housing in regional Queensland, advocating the Australian government in relation to regional university centres in rural Queensland, representing the federal, make a representation to the federal government in relation to increasing primary healthcare services. So that's in relation to general practitioner services in our communities, seeking a suitable decommissioning bond, as Councillor Shoemaker has spoken about in the renewable energy space, and the community engagement activities around that, as well as a community contribution fee. So Councillor Shoemaker's articulated those in great detail. So for the community, they're the number of items that your council, if resolved, will be taking to the LGAQ on your behalf and on behalf of regional communities across Queensland. Further speakers in relation to such? Councillor Hensham, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Fully supportive of this, and it will be extremely interesting when we attend this LGAQ Council in Cairns in October. And it was, as I've stated before, one of the most informative things I've been to as a councillor. And I would not be surprised, and as the Mayor's alluded to, this goes, I would be very surprised out of 77 councils that these points here from A to J are not supported by numerous councils out of those 77, where we all go collectively and push these motions to get expressed to our state and federal politicians and hopefully get some change. Certainly on the Code 23, as we've experienced just recently, they're seriously floppy guidelines on that, and we're going to be in the middle of a huge renewable energy sector here in the South Burnett, and a chance meeting with yourself, Councillor Shoemaker, and the CEO going across the Chinchilla was one that I would love to see all our representatives have that conversation with those style of people, because that was the most informative thing, as I'm sure you will agree, Councillor Shoemaker. In the middle of nowhere on a dirt road going across the Chinchilla was better than any meeting I've been into in closed walls, that's for sure. So fully supportive of this. It will be, and Councillor Erkins, I really look forward to your input into this and your participation, because this is fantastic. These points here made to move these motions up in Cairns, and as I stated, out of 77 councils, I would be very surprised if there's not 75% of those that are fully supportive of these motions. So, yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and fully supportive of this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Erkins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think in the last week we have had a couple of meetings with people, residents who have been, are going to be affected by both solar and wind farm future development. Really brings home the effect that it has on, you know, our everyday ordinary people who are living in our community, and I do think it is something that we need to be very mindful of, and thank Councillor Shoemaker for addressing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Closing comments, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just think this is a wonderful opportunity to stand with the other 77 councils and stand strong and united in relation to a number of these motions. We will provide, I guess, further detail as part of the submission process, and I've drafted a lot of that in the past. Then what happens when they are certainly debated, and some of it can be quite heated. I hope that doesn't happen with our motions, of course. There are a couple of councils I've been talking to who are supportive of these, and certainly the LGAQ has provided some advice as well. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to work with our fellow across local government boundaries, which is so important, and certainly to stand strong and united in some of the big issues, certainly domestic violence, housing, and the introduction or transition to renewable energy, what that really does look like for regional communities, and of course our healthcare services with our general practitioners, who we know are all struggling at the moment. And I suppose in my closing comments, I'd just like to recognise their incredible contributions and service to our community at the moment in incredibly difficult times. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly I commend this motion to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor. To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.2, Council nominate the 2023 special holiday. That's at 168, whereby the Standing Committee has recommended the South Burnett Regional Council progress the Monday of the 2023 Royal National Exhibition Brisbane, Monday 14 August 2023, as the 2023 show holiday for the South Burnett region, and further complete the 2023 special holiday request form and delegate to the Chief Executive Officer to submit via email prior to Friday 29 July 2022. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Erkins. Seconded, Councillor Henson. Speakers? To the vote? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Carried unanimously. Okay. 10.3, Australia Day nomination forms and location at 169. Again, the Standing Committee has recommended that South Burnett Regional Council 2023 nomination forms. Sorry, Councillor Shoemaker.
No, you're right, Mr Mayor. I would certainly like to move the motion that South Burnett Regional Council 2023 nomination forms be approved, and that the location of the Australia Day award ceremony be held at the Nanango Showgrounds on Sunday the 22nd of January. And I would like to add point 3, that the Junior Cultural Award recipient for 2022, Miss Juliana Evangelista, E-V-A-N, G-E-L-I-S-T-A, be invited to sing the Australian national anthem. At the award ceremony. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll take that as moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the pleasure of finally catching up and meeting with Miss Juliana last week and providing her with her award. She is studying currently in Brisbane. She is studying and majoring in music. She has strong roots here in the South Burnett, rich roots in the South Burnett, and speaks very fondly of her former music teachers, certainly at Kingaroy State High and Musicians Oasis. She has a voice of an angel and is a well-known participant in our community in a number of ceremonies. And I just think it would be wonderful, being that we had the certainly the challenges of COVID last year, that we invite her along. And our ceremony last year was cancelled because of the risk of COVID in our community at that time. I think it just would be really wonderful if we invited her along as the Cultural Award recipient last year to open our Australia Day Award ceremony with the National Anthem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? To the vote, those in favour?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Jones.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, don't disagree with Councillor Shoemaker's recommendation, but in the past, and I know everything needs to change at different times, but when we allocate the Australia Day celebrations to a region or a town, they normally take into account the organisation and try and use somebody local. I'm just putting it out there. I don't disagree, and I support what Councillor Shoemaker is saying, but yeah, as long as you don't upset the community of Nanango by not enabling them to use somebody in their community to do that. Something just to be aware of, that's all, before we go to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Jones, for providing that context. Further speakers, and we'll go back to Councillor Shoemaker for right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
I'd just
Henson.
like, if I may, Councillor Erkins, have some input into this, being in Nanango.
Thank you, Councillor Erkins.
I wasn't really aware of the procedure for it, but we do have we have a music school in Nanango, and I'm sure that there would be, people there that would love to be involved in it. Perhaps we could work in with the recipient from last year and do something so that, I'm sure that the students at the school in Nanango would be very pleased to see something from there. So perhaps we could work in and do that in the organisation.
I think we could take that as part of the process anyway, so happy with that. Yeah, Councillor Shoemaker to close, thank you.
Yes, I think that'd be a wonderful opportunity for collaboration. Juliana is certainly a local person, a local here in the South Burnett region, and I just think, trying to collaborate across our towns and across our region is so important, and this might be a wonderful opportunity to demonstrate the talent of our region. I'm also very mindful in the ceremonies that I've attended in the past that there's always been entertainment and different things offered as well, which I'm sure certainly Councillor Erkins, with her musical talents in her shed and with her connections in Nanango, will be a valid asset to helping us coordinate that. I just think it's a wonderful opportunity to showcase such a high achiever in our region who really is punching above her weight and has quite an incredible story. I think she'd be quite honoured to actually sing for us at that event. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Acting CEO, if you could perhaps just pass on to the Executive Services team who take the role of facilitating the day, that it would be Council's intention here that obviously we would collaborate with the Nanango community in relation to their involvement, as indicated here. And of course, we'd sent a lovely invitation to Miss Evangelista from the Office of the Mayor. Thank you. Okay, well, let's go to the vote. Those in favour, carry unanimously. Thank you all. 10.4 we're up to now. Monthly financial information at 174, and the recommendation is that the preliminary monthly financial report, including capital works and works for Queensland, as at 30 June 2022, be received and noted. Do we have a mover? Yes, thank you, Councillor Potter. Second, Councillor Duff. Okay, speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just noted, our incredibly impressive cash balance, which can be quite deceiving at the end of June, 62,369,000, and note that 24.396 million of this is currently classed as restricted cash. It's perhaps a question on notice. I know we've talked a lot about cash over these past, certainly through the budget discussions, and I know that we've also got the implications of both the state and the federal government paying us, so the federal assistance grant with a question mark in terms of whether they'll pay us 75% again or 50% or however that might look in the future, and certainly with the state government, the waste levy coming forward with such a large chunk in the bank account that we know has to be used for forward years in our operations. So my question, I guess I'm really keen to understand, is out of that cash balance, a reconciliation of some sort that demonstrates to us what the 3 months of actual operating expenses looks like that we must legislatively have in the bank, and then what certainly is restricted for forward water, wastewater projects, significant waste projects in our forward capital works program. What we've spent in the budget, what we've committed in the budget. I know things like the 2 million for the Betterment Fund. I know we've just put another 300,000 on the Wondai. We're talking about it today, but we discussed in the last standing committee meeting another 300,000 on the Wondai swimming pool. I'm just very mindful how we can make these decisions and not see the bigger picture, and how important, particularly at the moment in the turbulent economic environment that we're in, how important cash really is. So I just wondered, it's probably a question on notice, GM Susan, just to understand whether in an upcoming finance standing committee or whether we can organise a specific workshop just to go through that cash balance and just give everybody a bit of peace in mind in terms of how much of that cash is actually, in essence, free cash, not tied to a requirement such as forward expenditure like the federal assistance grants or the state waste levy, and that what we spent in our budget, so that we've just all got a solid understanding when we're making decisions about cash, how much cash is actually really there.
Thank you, Madam Acting CEO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, I think it was at a standing committee meeting that you did ask that question on notice, and which I appreciate. And prior to the budget there, Acting General Manager of Finance there, Kerry, and I sat down, and we, for my own information, I really wanted to be clear on exactly how much, in inverted commas, free cash we did have. So we have done a temporary reconciliation for you, identifying the under the regs there, the 3 months operating cash that we obviously obliged by law to have there, plus any other commitments there that we see in our provisions for long service leave and for annual leave there. So we will be presenting that, I think, at the next standing, and I stand to be corrected, Finance Standing Committee meeting for Council. And one of our other accountants has been unfortunately ill with COVID, so we're a little bit short-staffed at the moment. So we will actually get there and have a meeting. The finance team will have a meeting and make sure that we've ticked all the boxes, and then we'll most certainly produce that for council, and it is, like you're saying, it's surprising that it does look like a huge cash balance, but there's not a lot of actually free cash there once we take all the commitments out there for future projects or forward payments that we've got for the waste and also for our FAGS grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Acting CEO. Thank you, Councillor. Just perhaps to add a couple of things, on page 180, we can see the estimated position at 30 June. In the column that is the second from the far right, at the bottom there we can see a surplus, I believe, Kerry, of $1.38 million. And similar to what Councillor Shoemaker is saying, we just need to acknowledge that within that surplus there are prepayments that have been provided to Council in relation to particularly the FAGS grants, and I do believe the waste levy is also in there, 4 years worth of waste levy. So we had originally forecast a deficit of 2.9 million, but that came in as a surplus of 1.38 million, primarily due to the prepayment of those grants, Madam Acting CEO. But please feel free to add further. Yeah.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll hand that over to Acting General Manager, if you like, Mr. Mayor, and the General Manager can explain about the unwinding of the discount and the impacts that that's had on giving us such a positive result. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, that 1.38 million expected surplus that we had calculated for the end of June. So included in that is that prepayment for the federal assistance grant. The state waste levy at this stage doesn't sit in this income statement. It's in our balance sheet for future, which so that's not in there. However, the main, I guess, variation between the third quarter and the expected position does relate around the provisions for the landfill and gravel. And because we've seen such increases from the 1st of July 2021 to the 30th of June 2022 in the interest discount rates, we've seen a positive swing hit our income statement for how much we have to actually put away for the landfill and gravel provisions compared to what they were the prior year. So we don't actually, because of the discount rates are so high, we don't actually have to have as much sitting in our balance sheet as what we did the prior year. So there's been quite a significant credit increase hit our income statement for this financial year.
Excellent summary. Thank you, Acting General Manager. Thank you, Madam Acting CEO. Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Just had one final question, sorry. Just with page 180, as the Mayor's pointed out, the finance costs there, it says that we're now, can you just explain them to me? Minus 374%. Is that what you're talking about with the provisions? Is that where I'll see that, or?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. So originally we had put in our expected position quite a conservative, we used May's discount rates to work out potentially what would hit for those finance costs, those credits that were coming through. So between May and June, so where June's discount rates have actually landed, actually, as we know, interest rates have gone up a few times. So they've actually increased further, which is why we now have in that actual column, we now have a credit sitting in there because we had extra well and truly over and above what we'd expected based on May's discount rate. So again, where we had expected the $1.381 million surplus for June for the year to date for 21-22, we'll most likely be above that based on the fact that we've had around an additional 1.4 million, I think, hit credit there. So.
Thank you again, Acting General Manager. Okay, if there's no further speakers, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Next item is 10.5, the Annual Operational Plan 21-22 Implementation Progress Report for the period ending 30 June 2022. That is at 213. where it's recommended the South Bennett Regional Council Annual Operational Plan 2021-22 Implementation Progress Report for the period 1 July 2021 to 30 June 2022 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Mover, Councillor Duff. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Henson. Speakers? Should we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.6, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Ringsfield House Advisory Committee Terms of Reference, Strategic 023 at 286, where from the committee it has been recommended the South Bennett Regional Council's Ringsfield House Advisory Committee Terms of Reference, Strategic 023, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter. A seconder? Councillor Henson. Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Potter first. No? Councillor Erkins. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going, I know we had a meeting and this was discussed there, but just going through it last night, I just don't know whether we're being a little optimistic when we're looking for the following voluntary positions of a booking and event coordinator, a gardening advisor, marketing and tourist advisor, volunteers coordinator, and a museum curator, and social services community development advisor. From my experience, if we can get volunteers and maybe train them into some of these roles, but to actually be looking for people to take these positions, I do think we are being a little optimistic, because volunteers, as we all know, are in short supply, especially with COVID at the moment. People are reluctant to come out and put themselves into situations where they could be catching something. So I just don't know whether that's something that we do need to look at, and as I said, maybe take volunteers and, you know, possibly train them towards those things, but I'll just leave it with my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Erkins. Councillor Potter.
Sometimes you have to aim for the stars if you want to reach the moon. But I do, and that's one I do believe in. But with there are a few there, like the museum curator, we already have someone who's willing to take that role. And I do think this is something that if we work in with even some of the students that are at university around, some of these roles might be suitable for them as part of their work within their studies. But I do believe that I do believe that this is doable. And I think we just need to start somewhere. So to get this out there and see what people come back, and maybe we might have to go down that path and, you know, help people train in those positions. But I think this is a really great start, and I can't wait to see this committee get up and running.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was thinking the same as Councillor Erkins. I have thought that the whole way through, but I think that now we need to progress this. I'm frustrated about the length of time this has taken. I know I was actually going to move that the recommendation be an addition to it, that we actually go out immediately to expressions of interest and put a closing date and a report back at a certain time, because this is over 12 months we've been looking at this terms of reference, and I think it's too late to change it now, but I'm just really keen to get a closing, like expressions of interest out and a closing date. So if we could add that to the actual recommendation, I'd be really keen to see that happen.
Okay, Councillor, would you like to put forward a proposal, and then we'll go to Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson to confirm if that's with their consent.
So could I just add that in terms of reference, strategy 023 be adopted as presented, and expressions of interest go out immediately and I was going to put with a closing date of mid-August, and a report be brought back to the following Livability Standing Committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Just before I go to Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson, General Manager O'May, time frame in terms of expressions of interest: A, the production of such; B, giving potential applicants time to respond and then provide a report. mid-August. Your thoughts around that? Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, so I don't see any issue. Like the next standing committee or livability standing committee will be be the September one, because you won't be able to bring it to if they're closing mid-August, that's when the next committee would be. So yeah, I think we would aim backwards from that standing committee in September. Possibly leave the expression of interest open a little bit longer, just to give people the opportunity and rally up some volunteers. So yeah, I think you would use August and come back to September so that we could meet those timeframes.
So Councillor Duff, closing date of 31 August.
Yes, Mr Mayor, if that would then you still have time to go back to the standing committee for the following in September, or is that too too soon?
Yeah, possibly a week early, just to allow some follow-up with some people. So even if you said late August, Mr Mayor, I could suggest.
Okay, late August. Yeah, happy to leave that. Right. Thank you, General Manager. Okay, Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson, I'll go to you in terms of your thoughts to the change. Thank you.
No, this suits me. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's about time. Councillor Duff's correct.
Councillor Henson.
Yeah, no, Mr Mayor, I don't have a problem with that. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm very excited about getting started on this. I know it's been something that we have been talking about for some time, and I guess it's another demonstration of the challenges for our operation to meet our community's needs when we don't have staff and bodies in positions to actually do some of this work. So I really do appreciate the work that has gone into date, because I know it's been on top of a lot of other things. And to be honest, with Ringsfield House, I absolutely want to see it open. I do agree. I think it is ambitious going out for some of these positions. But as a university student myself, I know I've seen a number of these opportunities taken up by some of my fellow students as graduates who are looking for an opportunity to put on their resume that they've had some experience. I definitely think that is who we need to target with our communication around some of these specific ideas, because I do think they bring skills to the table and are hungry for learning opportunities. So I think they'd support our community if we were able to attract the interest of some university students. And I know a number of local students from Nanango in the South Bennett who certainly train and study out of our region, but I'm sure would look at an opportunity like this. I do think, my own personal view, I think we as a council actually need to find somewhere in our budget the funding to fund somebody to actually manage and support this committee into the future. I think it's for too long we have cut resources in our arts, culture, heritage and community space. To have a wonderful asset like Ringsfield House sit there when we're still paying the cost to maintain it, and know that our community isn't using it to its full potential is a giant concern of mine. And I do think we need to work with our community, work through our budget, and somehow find the funds to help this team really bring Ringsfield House up to the tourism mecca, and certainly the local facility that it could be for our community. I want to see cooking classes there. I want to see people doing yoga. I want to see people studying there. I want to see families come together on picnic rugs out front and book club held there. And I think we're all on the same page there. The opportunities to use a facility like this and really support the well-being of our community are huge. I think we've got to get started with this advisory committee, but I am and would fully support some actual resources for this facility. And I think that's something that we as a council need to look at in our first quarter review, and I will be looking closely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Potter to close? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Council, we'll deal with one more item I'd suggest before we break for morning tea. which will happen at 10:15, depending on the debate. And we do have a number of soon-to-be new Australian citizens waiting in the foyer. So we'll be doing that when we break at 10:15. 11.1 is a notice of motion in relation to North Street curb and channelling in Kingaroy. It's at page 290, where the recommendation is that South Bennett Regional Council considers one of three options. And you can see them listed there, 1, 2 and 3, just past the two kindergarten driveways. It's approximately 80 metres at a cost of $50,000. Just past the last residence driveway, option 2, approximately 145 metres at a cost of approximately $91,000. And just past the Scout Club driveway, approximately 185 metres at a cost of approximately $116,000. That's for the North Street Kingaroy curb and channel upgrading as part of its capital works program in 2022-23 and allocates the required funding in the 2022-23 CapEx budget in the first quarter review from council funds. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. A seconder? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Potter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've been thinking about this and I've gone back and sat there and watched, and I really think that we don't need to do the Scout driveway. That is the back entrance to the Scout Club. It is rarely used because they got the gates at the front of the Scout Den, which goes onto James Street. So I really don't think we need to go past the Scout Den driveway. I think maybe past the last residence, and I'm happy with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That being the case, Councillor, to give more specific direction to our staff, would you be prepared to take out items 3 and items 1 with the leave of council?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so as the mover, you certainly are entitled to do so. Councillor Henson, would you consent to that?
Yeah, I'm supportive of that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to further speakers then. Other councillors? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended a Kingaroy Kindy fundraiser on the weekend. I know how hard that committee does work to maintain its facilities and to provide excellent early childhood education opportunities for young people in our region and young families. I am supportive of this motion. I guess my thinking around allocating the required funds, it goes to my point before, I'm just not sure where those funds are coming from, if we're taking them from an existing CapEx program or if we're proposing using cash in the bank. So that's probably a question to General Manager Lowe. Or is this, again, another project that we may be able to allocate some of that LRCI funding to General Manager Lowe?
I'll just probably just clarify. Thanks for the question, Councillor. The LRCI funding is the 23-24 allocation. So the motion would go to council funds, which would be from our cash reserves. Did you want to address that, Madam Acting CEO, or would this be additional to the current allocation? Who'd like to address the question? Yeah, Manager Lowe.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yes, that's the intention. Because it's a roads project, essentially, we don't have, it's not like the water and wastewater, we've got the restricted cash for that type of thing, so that it will actually come out of our internal funds reserves.
Thank you, General Manager. We'll stay with you, Councillor Shoemaker.
So my question possibly is to Manager Kerry. Do we have enough funds to cover the cost of this project? And would we, if we move this motion, is it instead of, like, I absolutely want to see this done for the kindergarten. I'm just concerned about the allocation of funding component of it when I can't see what budget it would actually come out of.
Thank you, Acting General Manager.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess until we do the full reconciliation, it's a bit hard exactly to say. Yes, it would come out of council funds. It would be, I would be loath to say, yes or no. I mean, given that the amount 91,000. I guess the risk of it, posing a huge risk to council's bank balance and stuff in the future, probably quite low. Yeah.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. We'll stay with you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thinking, Councillor Potter, would you consider changing point 2, that we consider the required funding in the 22-23 CapEx budget in the first quarter review? I guess I'm just concerned about allocating funding without having a look at the entire picture. So certainly my intention. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson, thank you.
I just want to, so what were you asking about not doing it in the first quarter?
Should we just adjust that to say consider allocating the required funding in the 22-23 CapEx budget in the first quarter review from council funds, and then or after council funds take the bracket away, Bree, and just put or from grant funding sources. So I'm not saying by all means I want to see the project done and funded, but I'm just worried about allocating a funding amount without actually having a look at everything and what our opportunities for actually funding it are, and whether we need to review our capital works program, or what the risks of just sort of allocating funding off the cuff is.
Thank you, Councillor Potter.
I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Shoemaker, because you're right, we have done quite a bit of taking it from council reserves. So look, I'm quite happy with this. As long as this doesn't get put on the back burner, Mr Mayor, that's probably my biggest fear again. So as long as we make sure this does get done.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. And it states there that Regional Council considers it. And I sort of state regularly in this chambers, my fear is, again, that this drags out that possible approximately $91,000 will blow out to something much more extravagant to that. So, yeah, fully supportive of this. If we can get work in progress and costings and see where and how we can fund it sooner rather than later. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so we'll take the change to the motion as presented now. Councillor Erkins.
At the risk of alienating all those kindergarten mothers and fathers, I just think that there are a lot of other places that do need guttering. I know driving around Nanango, there are a lot of places there that are in need of drainage, and I just don't know whether this is because there are children involved, but whether we're acting emotionally or whether this is being done as a priority because it's a job that needs to be done is it being put before other jobs that need to be done with the same urgency? So I'd just like to put that out there, that there are other jobs, and we keep saying about the cost of things and how we don't have a lot of money. So I think, are we acting on a priority basis, or are we acting on the basis of the fact that there are children involved and it affects their play area?
Thank you, Councillor, and certainly worth discussing. We'll give Councillor Potter right of reply. Look, I brought this forward to Council, having been advocated to by the kindergarten group for some time, and I'm sure members of our team have had the same conversations. Having met with the committee on site with General Manager Lowe, what we're seeing there actually is something that's not necessarily occurring in other locations. So when the lay of the land is such that when the water comes down that roadway, it actually inundates pretty well all their entire property. So what that means is that for health and safety reasons, the children have to be confined inside the premises and can't go out into the yard due to the water. Sometimes there's water laying there, probably over knee height for children, and with young children, of course, that it would make it completely prohibits them from using the outdoor area. So it's So first of all, certainly there is significant water inundation, and they've showed me photos where when it rains, the water inundates the yard and lays there because there's nowhere for it to drain away. The second issue is that this is actually, from what I've been able to observe, at least myself, is that it's the only section of that particular estate that doesn't have curb and channeling. For some reason, that little last portion wasn't done. So it would be the completion of such for that estate, with the exception of the area behind the Scouts. Yeah, but that's my understanding. So I think there are sound reasons for this being seen as an exceptional case whereby there is sufficient demonstrated need for the works. That's certainly my view. But we'll go to Councillor Potter to close. Thank you, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor, Mr Mayor, sorry.
Councillor Jones, thank you.
I don't know, sorry to interrupt, but I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to do with Teams. I put my hand up when I want to speak, but if I need to do anything else, please let me know. Just a suggestion in regards to this. Myself and Councillor Henson have had a conversation. I don't know whether he's the groundsman there or whether he does some caretaking work and all that, and we've discussed this. Can I just suggest to our staff and our design crews, I'm able to give them the name of the gentleman, and I think it'd be well worth having a chat because he's got some ideas that could possibly save or certainly help the construction of this, and certainly go a long way to solving the problem of the water and everything else that gets in around that children's play area there. So yeah, I support it, but I just putting it out there. I've had conversations with Councillor Henson, very legitimate conversation about saving the amount of money that we spend there. So can I just suggest that I can pass on the name of the gentleman to our staff to work with, and maybe they can come to a cheaper solution.
Okay. Did you want anything to that, Acting General Manager, in terms of the work that you've done?
Yes, through you, Mayor. I'm happy to take some advice, but this is basically, if we're going for curb and channel, this will be the cost. There's no sort of shortcutting that one. It's because it's only about putting a pavement and a curb on top, so it is very minimal. I'm happy to be corrected. I just don't see that it's a way that we could actually reduce costs, and except not do the curb and channel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no.
Councillor Jones, we'll stay with you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I understand that fully, and yeah, you're exactly right. Just leave it as it is, and yeah, if we're going to do curb and channel leagues, yeah, he had other options, but anyway, it was probably to not even have curb and channel there. He thinks he could fix the problem without it, but yeah. Anyway, I'll pass on the name anyway, and you can do with it what you will, mate. Cheers.
Councillor Potter to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Erkins, for those comments. But I do feel that this is actually almost, it almost falls under a health and safety issue now because of the stagnant water, you get the mosquitoes, and we all know my aversion to mosquitoes over the last couple of years. So, and then you come in with the Ross River and, the Aedes aegypti mosquito. So we really have to be extremely careful, I think, when we're talking about kids and stagnant water and things like that. So my biggest thing would be we need to get something like this done. And look, I'm quite happy, Mr. Mayor, for if we want to, the Kindy wants to work with council and sort of help us out in this area, and maybe even that other gentleman, and it does work out differently, I don't know. But for the time being, we need to start something. We need to get this moving. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. I'll now move that we adjourn the
Mr.
meeting.
Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Jones, yes?
Sorry, Mr. Vic. Can I just, I'm aware of the time and the citizenship ceremony, but I would, after we come back, I just want to identify that I would like to move a motion from the floor, if that's all right. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I'll consider the motion based on the nature of such, Councillor. So you can present that after the meeting, and then I'll consider it in terms of its relevance to the agenda. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
So move that we adjourn. Seconded, Councillor Henson. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll resume the meeting. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 11.2 QRA process for betterment, 291. From the committee, it's been recommended that Council put forward the list of projects attached to item 6.3 in the agenda for betterment funding. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff. Seconder, Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'm very keen to support this proposal. I think that these projects have been obviously gone through a rigorous process with the staff, and just keen to see this progressed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Okay, nothing further? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all.
Mr Mayor, can I address the situation prior to Smoko about the motion?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, sorry. I'd like to offer to the chamber today, excuse me, where is it? I've sent it through to Bree, that the council take 250,000 from LRCI funds, 2.13 million allocated to resealing in the 22-23 budget, and allocate the temporary flat surface upgrade to commence ASAP and be completed before end of December, and replace the 250K back into reseals from LRCI funds for 23-24.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll accept the motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you. We'll go to you, Councillor Jones, to speak to the motion. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Again, look, there's been a lot of conversation around LRCI funding and projects across the region, and Councillor Henson alluded to a motion that was moved by Councillor Potter, seconded by him, about the other 10, and I see that in an email correspondence, Mr Mayor, you've added another 5 projects of high priority for yourself that you think is significant, but I'd like to see, we've had a long discussion around the fact that Nanango is 175 years. We've got Proston and also Cumbia. I'd like to see that we made a commitment that we would continue to work through those lists of projects and try and fund them somewhere. And I just think that we have the opportunity. We've done it in the past where we've taken some money from that reseal program. It's not going to reduce the program. We can top it back up again from the same pool of funding, LRCI in the 23-24, that we know that has been committed to us, and it's available on the 1st of July next year. So I would like to put that forward and hope get the support of the community, considering that we talk about listening to the community's telling us. I've seen some correspondence on social media where it used to be one of the significant areas for formal photos, wedding photos and all that sort of stuff. Before all that, she lost track of the fact a little bit when she made comment that the caravans and all that sort of stuff are staying there and whatever, but it is a significant entry point into Nanango. And I just think that I drive past there regularly, and as we all know, there's barricades and everything up protecting people not going into water and swampy looking area. So it's not the ideal thing to come through. So I just think it's a way of ticking off one of those projects moving forward. We're not asking to go into, or I'm not asking for restricted cash or anything like that. It's LRCI funding where we can move 250 across from reseals, but re-top it up so no one's losing out on it at all, but it gives us an opportunity to tick this one off.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Duff.
Mr Mayor, so just a question. So then is the plan then the 250,000 then goes, is that definitely committed back to resealing in that when we take it out of the LRCI, or is that still, is that what your commitment is, or is it just?
Well, that's my intention. Yeah.
So, and the other one is that I realise that, and I'm really supportive of trying to get something happening in Tipperary Flat. But the other project that Proston is celebrating their 100 years, and they haven't got the money either, and that was only about 30 or 40,000. So I'm just wondering, because their centenary is next year as well, is that possible to add that to this motion, or will I move a separate motion? Because I think that Proston has just as much of an issue with not having that project of theirs, the Wieners, done, is similar in the similar vein. So just wondering what the mood of the chamber is with regards to that.
So, Councillor Duff, to answer your question, that'll be a matter for Councillor Jones and Councillor Shoemaker as to whether we included that in the motion. If not, you would need to move a separate motion. Yeah, so I'll seek your thoughts on that, Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Yeah, look, happy to have that conversation around that, Mr Mayor, but like I say, the commitment was made in that resolution moved by Councillor Potter in that June meeting that we will certainly try and work through and fund all that, and well aware of the fact that Cumbia also is turning 100 as well, and we're talking about upgrading Apex Park in Cumbia. So how we get around that, whether or not we can address that through other funding, but I've always been committed to these projects across our region. There was no disagreement with the significance to the community of irrelevant of the social media conversation that went out. I've never been, I don't know that anyone in the chamber would be against doing those 10 projects. So how we get across that and that's as a group, we need to discuss and work and get across it and try and achieve all that. So, you know, all those projects on that 10 that we had all the conversation about, that all fits under LRCI funding, and as well as the 5 new proposals one's constant, but there's another 4 that the Mayor has added. So they're all, I'd like to see them all put into a list and we work through and prioritise from the most important and significant and down to, and work our way through that. And yeah, so I'm open for conversation and whatever, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Henshin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, through you. Thank you, Councillor Jones and Councillor Duff. Yeah, and again, we'll go back to that motion that was moved. There was 14, in fact, on that, and if we go through that list, I just myself highlighted 7 of those that have been probably discussed and scoped in some form more than the others, and I'll just quickly, McKell Park, Coronation Park, Cooper's Gap viewing platform, the shelters at the BP Dam. There's 9 mentioned there, Councillor Duff. I thought there was 10, but that's probably a minor thing for further discussion. The Proston Lookout and the Tingura drainage, as we've talked about. Just in relation to some of those others there, I think, as Councillor Jones has alluded to, and the Mayor, you're going to add some more, certainly a workshop around those. The Proston Wieners, would it be a fair comment to say the community, give that to the community, perhaps a suggestion, the community, and let them take that on themselves as a project? Like perhaps, I'm just putting it out there, perhaps just the men's shed or something rather than council take that, because your local community are the ones that know what they want to do and where they want to do it and what they might want with that finished thing.
Hold that thing.
It's just a suggestion. Thank you, Mr Mayor. And certainly look forward to further workshops on all of these, because as expressed in Councillor Potter's motion and that funding for 23-24, I think it's a great opportunity to proceed and certainly tick a lot of these boxes in future funding. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henshin. Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jones, for bringing this one to the table. I can see this really is just about a matter of timing. I think the LRCI allocation for 23-24 gives us the flexibility to continue that resealing project in this year and then flow into the following year, which I think on the counts that we've got about 28 million in the budget for roads, and then with the $20 million that we're actually doing in flood repair works, you know, there's going to be a significant amount of work done across our sealed and unsealed network over these next 2 years, I believe. And so I can see this really is just an opportunity to bring forward a project that will time in nicely with the Nanango celebrations for the 175 years. I fully agree. I actually worked for Nanango Shire Council under Reg McCullum when Tipperary Flat was established. It was a wonderful place, and it has been, I share with the community the sentiment, it has been sad to see the structures and things end up in the state in which they're in, and I guess that's the thing with timber work like that. But it was a wonderful addition to the Nanango community. And I know when the chainsaw sculptures and things were done, it all tied in beautifully to pay homage to our pioneers in Nanango. I fully support this recommendation, noting that it really is just shifting some funds to bring forward that project so that we can get it done on time. I am mindful the team's under pressure, and I guess, you know, we're challenging them to deliver on this with all of the things that they've currently got underway. Just in relation to the Proston Wieners, I agree. I think they're wonderful sculptures, and I definitely want to see them take pride of place in Proston. It's wonderful to see the plan that the Proston community has put forward from the round table. I do think I have had some conversations with other local funding bodies who may also be interested in a partnership in that project, which I'm probably more of a question maybe to Councillor Duff or certainly Mayor Otto, if in the conversations you've had with the roundtable, if they have actually explored that collaborative approach with another funding body. I am mindful that the W4Q allocation for did include $50,000 for upgrades to Railway Park in Proston. And when we discussed this at the Budget Committee meeting, there was a question on notice that was responded to. It was my understanding that it was likely there was going to be some funds left over from those works, and that a report and some more information would come back to Council in terms of what our options are to progress that project. It may not be in its full entirety, but it may actually get them placed. And I guess that was a question to General Manager O'May. I just wanted to check my thinking in regards to that one. It was my understanding there was some work done on the playground in Proston at that Railway Park, and that there was an opportunity maybe to stretch some of those dollars further. Thank you, General Manager O'May.
Perhaps we deal with this as a separate matter, if I could, Council. I know, Councillor Duffy, you've raised it, but I would prefer that you raise it as a separate matter, unless Councillor Jones is happy and Councillor Shoemaker is happy to consider a change to this to include the Proston Wieners. Otherwise, I'm happy to accept a motion from you from the floor once this is resolved.
Well, I do feel, Mr Mayor, it is a separate matter, and I do feel that the information in relation to the Proston Railway Park and the discussions we've had previously at the Budget Committee meetings is relevant to this, and so happy to discuss it as a separate matter and take this one for what it is for Tipperary Flat. Just mindful Councillor Duff did bring it up.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I think.
So seeking your direction.
Yeah, look, I would be suggesting to Council that we should deal with that as a separate matter. Councillor Jones has come forward with a very specific motion here in relation to Tipperary Flat, and I think Council should be given the opportunity to vote on that specifically and consider that. It would be my preference that should Councillor Duff wish to do so, we do deal with it as a separate matter or a separate motion if you want to bring that forward. Yeah.
So, Mr Mayor, just in closing, one final question, just in relation to the logistics of this. I do see we are kind of taking funds from a forward budget and replacing an existing commitment of council's. I just want to ensure with the team, maybe through you, CEO Susan, or certainly through General Manager Tim, that we will actually be able to commence this work. That the $250,000 from the LRCI funds will actually be enough, because I'm mindful that this project hasn't been scoped. I haven't seen a scope or a plan or anything of that regard. So I recognise it's a priority for the community. So probably through you, Mr Mayor, to General Manager Lowe, can you deliver on this, and certainly to Acting CEO Susan, just the logistics of funding, how that comes in and out of our bank account, and if this resolution is enough to demonstrate that intent of council for the allocation of the 23-24 LRCI, considering we haven't even tabled that yet.
Thank you, General Manager Lowe.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I can address the road pavement issue. That part, yeah, we're comfortable we could do that. I'd have to refer to Peter O'May for the actual the timber work stuff and everything that's above my schedule. Sorry.
Thank you, General Manager O'May.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so this was, as Councillor Shoemaker's indicated, this hasn't been scoped. It was just an allocation that was put towards upgrading Tipperary Flat. So we would need to move fairly quickly to narrow down that scope, because the key areas we were looking at is fixing the drainage down there, possibly looking at bollarding off the areas so we could actually you could spell areas that don't get into the situation there where they get overloved and in the wet, so we could actually maybe close areas and try to retain grass areas. So it was basically do a bit of master planning around how that site works. I don't know if we've, with the timber work and that, we haven't really looked at any of the scoping. So it was really just an allocation to do improvements down there. So we would just probably have to manage the budget to works up to that.
Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. So the December timeframe, considering this hasn't been scoped, do you think that is achievable? I guess I'm really mindful that learnings of the past where we've said, yes, do that project, and then we get involved and, it hasn't been scoped and it costs more. And I know we've seen with certainly the KTP and the Wandai Pool and a number of other projects that we've committed to where these price increases are out of our control. I'm just so mindful of the risk possibly of doing this project. It's why I voted against it previously, not because I didn't think it was right, but because I hadn't seen a project costing, a project scope. I'm just mindful the community wants this done by the 175-year celebration. I think we all do. I'm just mindful of the pressure this puts our council under, and is this achievable is probably my question to General Manager O'May.
So, GM O'May, do you have concerns about our capacity to deliver this project by December?
Through the chair, there's two elements. It would be actually a good project to do over the spring, summer, sort of, because we're trying to get that grass going. So it would be ideal. We would try at least to make sure you've got all of that earthworks done. So it would possibly be a matter of looking at reprioritising some of the capital works projects. It could wait till the later part of the year, but we really need to do this project prior to the next wet season, because that's caused all sorts of problems. So ideally it would be completed by December so we can actually, going into the next wet season, have it tidied up and draining properly.
Thank you,
I
General
think we
Manager
could
O'May.
actually come up.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager. Madam Acting CEO, in relation to the funding budget revisions, second part of the question was the funding arrangements for this and how that works with the budget changes. Seek your counsel on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We would have to collaborate with the Acting General Manager Tim's team and Acting General Manager May's team to see what capital we'd have to push back or bring forward, and that. So that would be, it's doable, but it would have to be a collaborative effect there, and it's quite doable though. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Atkins.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fairly sure that if we can work with community consultation on what is done there, and also, I feel sure that we could get some community contribution to work on some of those the timber things that were in there that, to try and keep costs down, to allow the money to be spent to do things that are possibly more important. But I'm pretty sure that our community are very keen to get that done, and there are organisations there that have been assisted by council that I'm sure that they would be happy to contribute back to our community for the celebration. So,
has any councillor had a chance to speak? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's just two things, and Councillor Jones, if I could direct, your motion is that 250,000, you allocate the Tipperary Flat surface upgrade. It doesn't actually state anything about the infrastructure, as Manager O'May has stated, so whether we add something in there in relation to facilities and park infrastructure or something. And the second thing I just want to bring to the chambers, and certainly any public that are listening or watching to this, when we get smashed about scoping projects and there's none being done on this, also want to make note that this is a 175-year a township, 175 years old. this is a priority, in my opinion, and I'd like to think this chamber takes the same approach and initiative to this, because when's our next 175-year celebration within the South Burnett? So I think this is a priority and fully supportive of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Councillor Jones, just in terms of Councillor Henson's comment there, surface and parklands upgrade, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, that was the purpose of the whole, motion, was that we go and tidy up that the surface of that Tipperary Flats. Now, I've done a little bit of conversations, just rough ideas and that sort of stuff, and that's where the 250K has come from. That was a figure that was sort of able to do that surface work. But yeah, look, I'm certainly willing, and Councillor Erkins has alluded, the Lions has got an area in there. I'm not 100% sure on Rotary, but I think those clubs, and I think that in discussions with people from those groups in the past, they're sort of looking for little projects like this. Well, not so much little, but looking for projects where they can contribute back to the community and do something significant, and certainly be recognised in their contribution back to the community in what they do. So, look, I'm happy to put surface and park equipment or something upgrade. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Schumacher, you consent to that?
Yes, absolutely. I think about, I guess what I'm thinking is it parkland, because it's not really the equipment, or displays, heritage displays. Because I'm mindful it really is around those, the timber wagon and the water feature. And I guess I was just thinking out loud, but certainly Councillor Jones has plenty of friends in the axemen and timber cutting game. I reckon we could arrange something whereby we look to do something good there with local people to renew those sculptures. They were all built by local people.
Thank you. So we have consent from the mover and the seconder to change that. Any concerns in relation to those changes? Councillor Potter?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think this is great, and if we can get those buildings done, and maybe, in conjunction with like all the different groups, as Councillor Erkins was talking about, and the men's shed, and, because the one thing I do love about Nanango is it's the one town you drive through and there's a piece of art just about everywhere. So, and, it'd be really good to see these buildings done, completed, and for the centenary, as well as the drainage issue that's there. Thank you.
Councillor Duff, any concerns with the motion as presented now?
Yes, I am concerned. I was the one pushing really, really hard, and I'm really keen to get this project up and running, and that's why I was very keen for it to be in the works for Queensland. I just was looking, because I pushed the reseal program, and there's a whole heap of reseals here, that smaller projects that are like 15,000 and 2,000 and different projects that were in that funding bucket that we're going to take this out of. How is that going to be, how will that impact on that reseal program and the numbers of roads that are going to miss out if we just take it out of the LRC, out of the reseal program as suggested?
Thank you, Councillor. So, should I mention low? So if we were to push back a or multiple projects, 350,000 of the following financial year, wouldn't miss out as such, but it would just mean they'd be delayed by potentially 12 months. Your thoughts on doing that, how that could happen? Any concerns from you in that regard?
Through you, Mayor. No concerns as such. So the way it'll be basically last on the list, first off the list, if you know what I mean. Like, so on our prioritisation, we've come up with our reseal. So the lower priority of the list of the reseals will be the first off, and then they'll be the first back on next year.
Okay. Do we know what is at the end of the priority list, just in terms of our communication of that to the community? I'm not sure if we've created an expectation out there that would be done. Have we got that there, Manager, in terms of our resealing program list? It's in our budget, is it not?
Yeah, I don't believe it's been published yet, Mayor.
I think it was published yesterday, was it not? Our budget was published yesterday. I'm just not sure if that was communicated to the community, in which case we just need to amend that communication. Yeah, not saying we don't do it, but just wanting to know which project would drop off, if it's possible to identify that. I think we had some 15 projects, Acting General Manager. Are we able to share those projects with Council just before we wrap this one up? Thanks, Acting General Manager.
Mayor, if I could take that on notice, I could get back to council as soon as possible to see which roads are impacted.
Yeah, just may have a bearing on today's decision, General Manager. It goes to Councillor Duff's question. Councillor Duff, I'll take the lead from you on this as you've raised the issue. Thank you.
To me, I am concerned because, like, I've committed to. I believe that the budget was done, and I've actually said that we're doing Silverleaf Road, like that. That's to me, that road is in a disgusting mess. And I've committed, based on that we did the budget, that Silverleaf Road was included, and there's other roads that I believe were very, very important. And I've said to some other people about some other roads around Mergen Reefs Road, for example, that it's got in the budget, and now that's the risk that those projects will be taken out.
Just a point of order, Mr Mayor. I think it's important to confirm for the chamber the projects won't be taken out. They'll be delayed and commenced from the 1st of July next year. I just don't want any misleading of our community here.
And I did clarify that, sorry, in my opening statement, that they would be pushed back 12 months.
So
Oh, sorry,
through you,
Councillor
Mr.
Duff.
Mayor, there is
Sorry.
no guarantee that we would even do a resale program. Like I'm just saying that we do a budget every year and we keep losing money out of resales. How I'm not misleading the chamber. I'm suggesting that we take money away from resales. We almost took all of this LRCI money away from resales to do one particular
Councillor,
road.
please address the chair.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Please address the chair. Thank you. General Manager Lowe, yeah, look, if we're not in a position to clarify that today, and Councillor Shoemaker is right, that the intent of the motion here is to reassign the $250,000 back into reseals from LRCI in 2024. So if this is adopted by council, then that would be certainly enshrined in a resolution, which would be have to be carried through, Councillor Duff, unless this was rescinded. Now, once the work starts on this Tipperary flat project, it would be unable to be rescinded. So this would commit council to, I'm sure if Mr CEO was here, he would confirm my views, that this would commit council to spending $250,000 on reseals from LRCI in 23-24. And General Manager Lowe, the intent here is to say, well, whatever we drop off in 22-23 will automatically then get the first Guernsey in 23-24 from those LRCI funds, because I believe that's Councillor Jones' intention here, to be clear, as Councillor Shoemaker is saying. General Manager, yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So the very first ones on the reseal list for next year will be the ones that dropped off, that is pushed out from this year.
So that would definitely happen because that is part of the resolution.
Absolutely, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Just to confirm. Thank you. Councillor Duff, you comfortable with that response?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we proceed. Councillor Jones, anything to conclude? Right of
No,
reply.
pretty much. Yeah, all good, Mr. Mayor. Just hope I get the support.
Thank you. Well, let's go to the vote then. Oh, sorry, hang on. General Manager, General Manager Lowe, General Manager O'May.
Yeah, through the chair, I just had I thought the LRCI program for this year, we had to submit the application prior to 30 June, so it would have already been submitted. Are we able to make a variation? We've already submitted to the department a list of projects for that that was the requirement why we needed to do that before 30th of June. I just realised. So making a change, a variation and now, I'm sure they would accept, but that was the requirement we had to submit by 30 June for the LRCI.
That's a very good point you've raised. It was remiss of me. I know our CEO had made that clear, hadn't he? I'm wondering, Council, whether we should consider laying this on the table until we confirm that with the funding body. I'd hate to create an expectation in the community and then find out that LRCI, that the federal government say, no, you now can't change it. Should we check that? What are your thoughts, Madam CEO?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Absolutely. I do remember the CEO was quite definite that we had to have that in by the last meeting to have it confirmed to be approved by the department. So I'm assuming that that was done at the required time. So yeah, I'd like the opportunity to go back and just to confirm that with the department, that if we do an amendment, if we have the capacity, or before committing to this.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm thinking on that condition. My thinking is that we recognise this is a very important project. We recognise and we're wanting to make it a priority for the LRCI 23-24 year, but we are wanting to complete the project before that time frame. So that does mean a shuffle of funds from the reseal program. I'm just, I'm thinking out loud, like I'm wondering if we, yeah, I do think we need to lay it on the table and confirm that first, just to be assured that, you know, the government will allow us to make a variation at the last hour. I know I hate this flip-flopping, but somehow I guess it's the challenge of trying to manage all of our priorities. I think Councillor Jones' intent is very good, and that we are trying to nominate it as an LRCI project. However, I can see the time frame here and just making sure that we're not breaking any rules from a funding perspective. I'm just so mindful of the time frame, you know, in terms of getting the staff to get started on this project. So you'll still, yeah, so can we just confirm, if we lay this on the table, can we commence the scoping of this project and do we need a resolution to determine that intent is probably my question.
Yeah, I think, yeah, certainly the first step would be to get the advice from the department, wouldn't it, as CEO said. So first step is probably to see where we deal with this. Look, I'm going to, in support of our CEO, I'm going to move that we lay the matter on the table, Council. I think that is the prudent thing to do here, to give our CEO time to just check that. There's no reason why we can't bring this back to the Infrastructure Standing Committee, which is not that far away, and we can reconsider it. If we do that, General Manager Lowe, noting that that'll be the first Wednesday in August, is that going to give you still time, General Manager May, to get your scoping and planning and get the project started if you get direction from Council, from the committee, that that's where we're looking to go?
Yeah, through the chair, as I was going to say, we'll commence this project straight away, do the scoping, just to, as we know, Council's intention is to fund it. It's just working out the mechanics of that. So yeah, we're certainly very clear that Council wants this project to happen. So yeah, we'll get the scoping and that work started straight away.
Thank you. Yeah. General Manager Lowe.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Just would like some clarification with the intent of this for the roads. It's to replace it with a gravel surface road, not a bitumen surface road, or I just wanted to define that a bit, please.
Tipperary Flat Park, you're referring to?
Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, we go to Councillor Jones. I don't think there's any intention here to seal any of the roadway into the park, but Councillor Jones, could you clarify the intention? Thank you.
Yeah, no, Mr Mayor, I certainly don't. It's just to eliminate the water and all that sort of stuff and present it at a better, higher standard that, we keep banging on 175 years of entry into the town. I believe that it can be done, but it has to be approved and agreed to as an amendment to our funding source and the LRCI. If the government approves it, it can be done. That's my understanding of the whole process. I'll just throw this out here then. Is it a possibility that we look at funding it take it out of restricted cash out of the transport and roads? I'm sure there'd be some restricted cash somewhere in there, and yeah, we can have a look at doing that just to get this up and going rather than go through the process. Is that an option? Would the chamber be interested in doing that?
Okay. All right. This is I'm getting tied up on this one. I'm going to move that it lay on the table, this motion, because I do think we need to take time to consider it. Even if we consider going from restricted cash, I still think we need some understanding as to where our cash position is at, Acting General Manager, before we commit to that. Similar to what we're suggesting with the 90,000 for the curb and channeling, we need to see that cash rec so we do understand what our commitments are on that pool of funding that we've got. Because for roads, we don't have a restricted cash budget. This would have to come from that unrestricted cash that that Acting CEO calls free cash. So I think I would honestly, I would like to put forward that we do lay this on the table for the time being, and we can consider it at the Infrastructure Standing Committee in a couple of weeks' time. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. We'll go to the vote on that. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And if we can,
Mr. Mayor, can I
thank you, Councillor Jones. Yes, go
can
ahead.
I just make a comment that I'm sorry, obviously everyone's aware I'm going in for a knee operation if all goes to plan next Wednesday. The Infrastructure Committee, I may not be back on deck, whether or not I can get to teams in or not, but can I just make my situation known that I am very keen to see this get up. Now, I'd like to see that the staff will follow through and see if we can make an amendment to that funding scheme. But I would certainly be in favour of any option to fund this and get it up and going ASAP. So if I can just make that known if I don't happen to get to the Teams meeting.
Acting CEO, would you be able to make a note to work with the senior executive team to bring a report back to the Infrastructure Standing Committee in relation to the LRCI funding variation option? Yep, and perhaps any other information that our general managers see as being relevant to this decision of council in relation to the scoping, the costing, the nature of the works, and also the funding source. That would be appreciated. So we'll commit to bringing that back on the we'll commit to bringing that back in light of Councillor Jones's comments. We'll commit to bringing that back to the next Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting, which is on the first Wednesday in August. Yeah. Okay, so that's that one. Councillor Duff, to be fair to you, you raised the issue of the Proston Wieners. Did you want to raise that matter in council now?
Mr. Mayor, I think I will leave that because I'm just disappointed in that whole process, that we can just take out of left field something that wasn't scoped and take it away from what was committed funds that we've actually I've gone out to the community with. So just disappointed in the whole process. Okay,
so we'll leave that be. Thank you. We'll now move on, Council, to the next item, which is 11.3, Stage 2 Wondai Industrial Estate at 327. And we do have, I believe, a recommendation there that... Okay, where are we on this one? An amendment, don't we? Next page. Yeah, so the recommendation is that Council commit to fund the design and then consider funding the works for the completion of Stage 2 of the Wondai Industrial Estate within the 22-23 roads capital works budget, with full costings and a report to come back with potential funding options, with works to include a two-way access on Kemp and Burrows streets and improved signage across the industrial estate. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Duff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this one here, I have been pushing this right from the word go, because this has had a huge impact on Parkside and a whole heap of the other businesses around Wondai. This is the kind of project that I thought we would potentially we would, in the resolution, it's that we fund the design and consider funding the works for the completion. And I was thinking that kind of project would probably flow over into that LRCI funding. So, but it looks like that LRCI funding is just going to be taken up with a whole heap of other projects. But this, to me, this is a real priority because it affects our businesses. It has a huge impact on all of those people in the Wondai industrial estate and Wondai itself, and just concerned now with the way that this whole budget process is going, that we'll end up not even getting any support with this, but definitely wanting to get this funding happening for the design, and hopefully somewhere along the line, somewhere in among all of this, we can actually find the funding, which is really important to this estate, to find that money to actually do the stage 2, which is the Kemp and Borough Street, and the two ways for that particular area. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Just to clarify what you said there, Councillor, please. Probably a point of order again. Council has not committed to any investment on LRCI funding for 23-24. So yes, projects have been put forward, and I've put some projects forward. This one was included, and certainly Councillor Jones has this morning. But just to be clear, I know you've expressed your disappointment with the process, but we still haven't embarked on a process for allocating that LRCI funding at this stage. So nothing's a done deal. You know, this still has to go through our proper process of council. I just want to clarify that for everybody, okay? Okay, so further speakers on this? Councillor Schumacher. Sorry, Councillor Jones, I should be watching you on the screen. We'll go with you first and then we'll come back to Councillor Schumacher.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I want to draw it to the attention of the councillor. Right from the very word go, Councillor Henson and myself went down and spent a number of hours discussing this issue with the Wondai business people in that industrial estate. So I just want to highlight the fact that I've never been against it. I've met with Councillor Duff and other business people down there as well, and I said that it's our job to go back and try and find funds to do this. It's been a process. No one's ever been against it. So there's been a lot of people that have been involved in this right from the word go and been pushing very hard, and we were successful in getting funding for the first stage, and now we need to complete the second stage. And I'm very glad, Mr. Mayor, that you highlighted the fact that no one's committed to the LRCI funding, and this sits very nicely underneath the opportunity to fund it through LRCI. So I just want to make that quite clear to the people. I hope there's people watching and media out there too as well to spread the word, because there's been a lot of people involved. A whole lot of us have been involved in there, somewhere down there having conversations, trying to get this resolution or a problem solved. So, you know, I just want to I'm getting a little bit tired of the fact that other people don't seem to be. Anyway, so this does fit underneath the possibility of LRCI funding. I fully support the motion that's in front of us. And I think that we do need to work through and continue working and trying to get a resolution for the people down there that it has upset and created a problem for. And I also want to make note of the point that the work that's been done down there with the signage and the one-way movements and all that, you would not be able to operate in there if that wasn't put in place. Now, our engineers and all that, that's the legislation that they had to operate under for any movement of traffic, heavy vehicle traffic in that industrial estate. So that also needs to be made a point of, that the staff have done everything they possibly could. If they had an option, they would have made it a two-way street and all that sort of stuff. But the legislation and the heavy vehicle movements restricted that. And that's why it was set up the way it is. And that's why we need to do stage 2 and fix the whole problem. And until we do stage 2, that issue is going to be there. So I fully support this, and we do need to find out how we fund it. And if we have to go and get it through to the LRCI and get it on the 1st of July, so be it. But we need to have that conversation. So I fully support the motion as it is.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. And I mean, let's all focus in on the motion here, and let's keep it clear. This is about Wando Industrial Estate only. So let's confine the discussion to that if we can. Thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we've had rigorous debate about, as we always do with many of the things that come across the council table here, and debate is encouraged. I think, and as always, I respect the decisions of council. I did really enjoy the opportunity to discuss this further at the standing committee meeting, and to be honest, I will support this motion because I do believe we do need to design it and we do need to understand the costs of such. The funding mechanism still has a question mark for me, because I'm clear, as Councillor Duff's pointed out in the previous discussions, that we have made commitments to our 22-23 roads capital works budget, and I'm not entirely sure we can just slip this one in there. And I'm also very mindful of those LRCI funds, and that the funding criteria does allow us to invest that in community infrastructure, which I know is a priority for our region. I will support this motion because I recognise that this is an important project for the Wandai Industrial Estate. I really do want to understand the costs. I still believe that we should be approaching, and I hope when we get the costs, we should be approaching the operators in that vicinity and be having these conversations about a co-contribution, because I know firsthand there's a very large operator in Kingaroy who has paid an enormous amount of money to upgrade intersections and things to support his operations here in town. And I think it's double standards if we say it's okay for you to do that in Kingaroy but not okay to do that in Wandai. I did also want to point out, I know there's some incredible community rhetoric around which communities are missing out, and I really, such a shame to hear that on the back of the budget after the painstaking hours that we put into that budget, and we've all admitted that it is very much a work in progress. I wanted to point out that for the Wandai community, I recognise this is an important project, and I know we've backed that because we put over $900,000 worth of grant funding into the first stage. I also wanted to point out, and just to clarify, that the Works for Queensland allocation did include $700,000 for the Wandai roundabout, that we have got a BBRF grant for the Wandai pool, and we're looking at an anticipated $900,000 spend there, and that there has also been a $100,000 allocation for Works for Queensland for park upgrades. Now, I know that doesn't go far, because I know there's an enormous list of projects and priorities across our region. And I think our previous discussion demonstrated how hard our council works trying to balance the priorities of our community and with the budget, because at the end of the day, that's the reality. You know, we have got to get better at sourcing funding and looking for opportunities. And I think this project is another example where we could potentially leverage and stretch our dollars further if we were brave enough to have a conversation, if we demonstrated the courage to have a conversation with the operators in that industrial estate about what they need to operate their businesses effectively and how they may be able to co-contribute to a project like this. Because that is no different to the standard we have set in other towns in our region. And I think we all talk about fairness and equity and all of these things, but at the end of the day, Kingaroy consistently gets slammed while every other town who is equally, their priorities are taken into account. We are listening and doing what we can to address them. I am disappointed by that. I think this is an example of a genuine investment in our community, because we recognise how critical that Wandai industrial estate is, how many dollars are returned to our economy because of it, and how many people are employed because of it. I think it's a wonderful project of the original Wandai Shire Council. It's obviously grown and been a great success story, but I do think we do need to think about some of these things more strategically, and that's what I would like to put the challenge in this chamber here today. I'll support this motion because I want to understand the design costs, but I absolutely believe we need to be having more really concentrated conversations with potential partners, because that's where we're at this council, and our budget demonstrates that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henshin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, and we're not going to be diverted in relation to Wandai, but there's a lot of projects in Wandai that's been completed and on the board. But I'd just like to perhaps council could contemplate a media release around this industrial estate, just as Councillor Jones has alluded to, and there's been a lot of conversation, we're all in favour of this stage 2 development in the industrial estate, that's for sure, but perhaps a media release stating and putting it out there that the legislative requirements is why the work has been completed the way it has been, and council will certainly work within its ways and means to rectify that in future development. And as Councillor Shoemaker's alluded to, some very good points there, with perhaps some input from business houses and industrial estate operators down there that could perhaps contribute in some shape or form, and fair and equitable, as Councillor Jones and Councillor Shoemaker has alluded to, but perhaps a media release just outlining that the legislation requires in that industrial estate the purpose of how it's been set up at the moment. And certainly that, I'm sure, with the support of this chamber, that council will work very hard and diligently to rectify that problem as quickly as possible.
Thank you,
That's a
Councillor.
suggestion, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Media and Comms Officer Joanne, would you be so kind as to make note of such and work with Councillor Jones as the portfolio holder councillor in accordance with our media policy to develop a draft and then have it circulated to all councillors for review and feedback? Thank you very much. Just a couple of questions here, Acting General Manager and Acting General Manager Finance as well. That council commit to fund the design, do we know approximately how much that's going to cost us? Because I imagine that will have to come out of operational OPEX funds, and that if the project goes ahead, that could perhaps later on potentially be capitalised. But in the first instance, it would have to be funded from OPEX. So I'm probably keen to understand how much money are we committing to here, even just an estimate at this stage to inform council. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. I haven't got it on me, but I think it was 35 to 40,000 was what we were estimating it at.
Okay, thanks for confirming that. Much appreciated. Yeah. Any further speakers before we go back to Councillor Duff for closing comments? Okay. We'll go to you, Councillor Duff, to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, really keen to support this project. I think that we should consider always carefully our budget. And I think that if we'd made good decisions in that last budget, we probably wouldn't have been jumping at shadows now trying to get funding for example, Tipperary Flat and perhaps this particular project, because I think we need to be really careful about what buckets of money these projects come from. Really keen to have this design supported, and hopefully somewhere in among all of the different buckets of money and funding that we can come up with the actual money to support this project, because I believe it is incredibly important for the community of Wondai, for the industrial estate and for our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. We'll just confirm we're voting on here that Council commit to funding the design at this stage, committing to funding the design this year's budget, $35,000 to $40,000. And then from that, Council will consider potential options for funding the works, but at this stage, funding the design. So let's go to the vote on that. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 12.1, Notice of Motion, Kingaroy Vic. That's at 3:29, and it's thanks, Councillor Potter. We've got that Council take ownership of the sewing machine that was donated to the Big Peanut Committee for display at the Kingaroy Visitor Information Centre. Councillor Potter, I imagine you'll be wanting to move this one because you brought this forward.
Yes,
Thank
you. Can I just change that wording? The council take ownership of the sewing machine that has been donated by the Big Peanut Committee. I think, so I think if we change that wording.
That has been donated.
Well, I don't know, just because it reads it there that it was donated to the Big Peanut Committee, but it wasn't actually donated to them. They actually...
By.
Yeah, okay, that's better.
So donated by the Big Peanut Committee?
Yes, thank you.
Can we change that? Donated by. Yeah,
That's it.
by. Thank you. Councillor Potter, you'll move that?
Yes, please, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Do we have a
I'm happy.
seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Councillor Potter, did you just speak to your motion? Thank you.
No, I think we discussed this the other day because this is a beautiful piece of art. It's got the heritage of the Peanut Solos, and to actually start getting some of the artwork that we own out there, as I mentioned earlier, you go to Nanango and they got sculptures, they got beautiful, their men down the street with I absolutely love it. And I'd love for Kingaroy to start getting along those lines as well. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this is a beautiful piece, like looking at the images of it. It's a beautiful piece, and as I've said before, I definitely think I certainly agree with Councillor Potter's sentiment around trying to get some of these art pieces that are owned by our community on display. It's probably just a question or a thought, but in relation to this one, Councillor Potter, like, is it possible to take this back to the arts committee that you've got established, and just to understand with some of the other pieces that we've got in safekeeping, their recommendations or suggestions for how we may be able to place them around the community, and I guess pay homage to the artists, or because I'm mindful with this, I don't want to see it plonked just in the visitor information centre. I do think we need to acknowledge the artists somehow, and I guess I'm just opening this up for conversation with you. I think it's a really important thing that maybe could be tabled at your next arts advisory committee meeting, and some recommendations brought back to council around how we might be able to display some of these pieces effectively. It's certainly outside of my scope, and I know there's lighting and things as well that can be relevant. So probably just a question through you, Mr Mayor, for Councillor Potter.
Thank you. Just before we go back to Councillor Potter to wrap up and answer that question in closing, any further speakers? No? We'll go straight back to Councillor Potter to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I've actually had discussions with the Kingroy Art Gallery and the Kingroy Arts team with regards to some of these pieces and where they can be put. With regards to the peanut, the Big Peanut Committee had suggested that it be on the plinth in front of the Visitor Information Centre, because that's a big piece of concrete that we've never had anything on, and it would really suit a place like that. All artwork should have a plaque on it that says the owner, that says the artist, what the art piece is about, and then maybe that, who it's donated by. And there are a few funds, there is still a bit of funding there from the Big Peanut Committee that they would hand over to us to help with the fixing of that piece of artwork and maybe the plaque work. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.1, Council's Planning Scheme Resolution for First State Interest Review at 3:30. We do have an officer's recommendation there, and it's a bit to read, but as presented, Council endorses the proposed major amendment, endorses the statement of state interest, endorses the communication strategy, authorises our Chief Executive Officer to give notice to the Minister, and decide to proceed to public consultation after the conclusion of the state interest review. So that's a summary. So recommendation as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just think this is rather an exciting agenda item, being that it's been something that we've discussed certainly since I commenced on this term of council. So I just want to acknowledge the incredible efforts of the team to get us to this point. I know they've been down staff. We've had an incredible upturn in building and development applications over this past certainly 12 to 18 months. And just want to acknowledge that to undertake a major amendment to a planning scheme is enormous. And I know they've worked very hard to take the feedback that's been collected over a very long period of time from a number of different developers and community members about our planning scheme, and tried to work that into the planning scheme and into this amendment. I'm really excited about some of the opportunities for things like bush camping and eco camping, and certainly farm stays. And I think this has got a wonderful flavour of farm stay tourism in it, and trying to make some of those things simpler for businesses. I also know we've worked hard to ensure that economic instrument that we adopted to make things easier for small businesses is retained in the planning scheme amendment, and that certainly we've looked at the seeking to balance the competing objectives of ensuring there's enough land available in the right locations to support our community's needs. And we know housing is certainly a need, as is the need of business and industry growth, and it's equally shouldn't come at the cost of our natural assets. So I think from what I've seen, it's been an extensive parcel of work. There's been an enormous amount of information provided to this council to get us to this point. I think by no means is it done and dusted. I'd certainly encourage everyone, once it comes back from the government and we open up that public consultation period, to take a look at it. Like, these planning schemes are long-standing documents. And so more eyes over it and more feedback is absolutely accepted and appreciated. So I just want to acknowledge certainly General Manager O'May and our entire planning team who have put in so much work in trying to get us to this point, and that it is quite an exciting day to have this go through its first state interest review. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've first had feedback from some of the developers who've seen this draft that their amendments have not been included, particularly the one in particular was zoning around the medical centre and the Kingaroy Hospital wasn't included. So, and they're very frustrated. So just wondering, a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to General Manager O'May. I know that you've said that they're going to be included later on, but why we wouldn't do that up front?
Thank you, General Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the process is it goes out, so they people still have the opportunity to submit their changes now. So all of those suggestions will work through and workshopped with councils and either included in the draft or weren't included in the draft. We haven't we haven't included every suggested rezoning because I suppose the planning scheme amendment isn't the process to get a development application by just changing the zoning to what you want it to. So there are a couple of zonings that probably weren't considered. Council will have the opportunity to reconsider those. But yeah, the planning scheme, you just need to look at the implications of each of those. If you rezone and it changes the level of assessment for an application, that means that if you change it from an impact to a code assessable application, you're removing the opportunity for the community to make comment on an application. So you do have to weigh up those things. The submissions we've got in prior to now helped us inform the draft that goes out, but it's not the end of the process. Like the formal process of public consultation commences now after we put the draft out. So the opportunity still exists for community to resubmit them. I believe we did include a number of those changes, not everything. But yeah, the opportunity, people can put their submissions in. Council is obliged to answer those submissions, give reasoning why we would or wouldn't support it in the planning scheme amendment. But yeah, there is a mix. Some we have. I think the hospital stuff, I thought we did make changes there, identifying that overlay area. So yeah, just without going into specific ones, some were included and some weren't, but the opportunity isn't lost.
We'll stay with you, Councillor Duff.
Well, I just think that what should have been put to the councillors was we should have seen the submissions and then weighed up whether that should have been included in this draft that went to the minister, because otherwise we councillors are not aware of what's been put, what the community has been put forward so we're just flying blind here, and I'm not prepared to support this because I'm getting feedback that people are not happy with this, that the developers are not happy.
Councillor, thank you, Councillor. You happy to wrap that up there. So, General Manager O'May, I think the issue we're talking to here is the extension of the local centre zoning, the LC zoning. Has there been in version 2 any proposal to extend local centre zoning in Kingaroy so that it broadens out to pick up some of those areas that are currently residential that may actually lend themselves to, for example, medical services, as Councillor Duff had mentioned? So, direct question, any extension to the local centre zoning proposed at this stage? Yeah,
through you, Mr. Mayor. So in that one, no, that hasn't been included. That was included in the workshops that we have worked through this with council. Those discussions were had. With council, they did advise council that around that one that not everything was included in the scheme. So yeah, those discussions were had as part of the workshop. So yeah, it's council scheme, I suppose. So yeah, we can you certainly will have the opportunity to revisit those. But no, that specific one, I'm aware of what you're talking about now. That extension hasn't been included in the amendment.
Thank you. And while I've got the floor, and certainly Councillor Shoemaker will give you you'll get to wrap up. So if you could just, we'll come to you
point
last.
of order.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I just want to confirm, I'm a little bit confused by some of the comments made here. It was my understanding that there's a rigorous process around making a major planning scheme amendment, and I was of the impression that these documents weren't to be shared yet until we'd actually been endorsed by the minister, and then we could go out to community consultation. So I'm a little bit concerned about some of the comments made around talking with developers who'd put suggestions in and whose suggestions haven't been included, and just want to confirm how that would be possible if we haven't shared the documents, because I wasn't aware that I could actually share any of the information that had been workshopped by council twice. So I'm concerned about some of the comments made here, and certainly the engagement with developers before our major planning scheme amendments even been reviewed by the minister. So I just want to confirm, possibly with General Manager O'May, have I got the processing correct? And we could go and share all of the information publicly. And
yeah.
if I have, I'm really concerned about some of the comments that have been made.
Yeah, if we can address the point of order, General Manager May. Question first. Version 2 has not been and cannot be distributed for public viewing until we get a response from confirmation from the minister. Is that correct? That's the first question. Is that correct? So no one out in the community would have seen it at this point in time?
Yeah, just through the chair. No, I believe that the proposed amendments were included in the standing committee last week. So those documents are out in the public. So people need to be aware that they are a draft document. They haven't been approved by the minister, so they were just approved by council for release to go through the process. But yeah, so they certainly, if the minister comes back, they will change. So you can't give credence that is it. So but they were included in the agenda.
I think the point of order went to, has this been shared publicly? And you're saying that actually it has been shared publicly through the minutes. I thought it had been at the SCM, but and so pursuant to that standing committee meeting, just to clarify for the chamber, I have received an email from a developer raising concerns. I haven't spoken to this developer. I have had no communication with the developer. I have policy that I don't do that unless I've got the CEO in the office with me or the general manager. But in this case, the developer has raised the concern that low centre zoning, the broadening of the low centre zoning boundary was not included in version 2. Now, clearly this particular person, who shall remain anonymous, has read version 2 on council's website and now has raised concerns and asked for a meeting with all councillors to understand why we didn't include an extension. My understanding is that this particular party has been seeking a change to the LC zoning for some years. And I think from the meeting we had with this person 12 months ago, they had said some 3 years, which would now become 4 years, that this party has been advocating for a local centre zoning expansion. If that was to occur, that would then, as you're indicating, make it potentially, if that property was caught within it, no longer impact but actually code accessible, is what this party is indicating. So hence my question, and thank you for clarifying that we haven't extended the local centre zoning at this point in time. There will be questions come to council as to why we haven't done that. I'm probably just, I suppose, putting that out there at this stage. The other question I had, moving on then, was agricultural land. I'm keen to understand at the moment, and I apologise if I haven't got the detail of this from the workshop, but the agricultural land zoning. So if it's 100 acres, I had this mindset that 100 acres you couldn't split it up any less than 100 acres in our region under our current planning scheme. And if we had, an area where they wanted to do specific boutique type agriculture, tourism type work. Have we addressed that in version 2? Because I know we've had some advocacy around this from the community as well. And if so, the question is, number one, what are the rules around splitting up ag land? And number two, have we addressed that in terms of those special type of cases where there's economic benefit from such?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, so the situation you are talking about, so we have identified a particular tourism development area which would allow the smaller lot sizes in the good quality agricultural land. So we have addressed that. This is certainly a particular area where we need to be very cognizant of what the state, because this is where we will start to impinge on state planning policies on the protection of good quality agricultural land. So this is an area they will pay particular attention to. So as part of that, we need to demonstrate that there is the justification and the rationale behind that one. But yeah, we have included that to identify specific precincts which has got that tourism and economic development that, in a small area.
Thank you. And in version 2, and I'm sorry I haven't got here to read, but does it actually specify for that particular area what the size of the land apportionments would be that we're proposing, or have we not gone down to that level of prescription?
Yeah, we haven't gone down to identifying a particular
land size areas. Okay, that's fine. Thank you, General Manager. Third question, first of all, I've got the floor and I'll wrap up. Would it be inappropriate, with the leave of council, for the Mayor to advocate to the Minister in relation to the point I just raised around agricultural land and the opportunity for us to maximise the economic return from such as a region in advance of the Minister signing off on the state interest integration? Or should that wait until after the state interest response has been received? Just in terms of our advocacy as a council on that particular matter solely.
Yeah, through the chair, I believe it's probably prudent just to wait till we've got the response through so it's really just assessment against those policies, because they may be consistent with our views, but it's certainly part of, we do have the opportunity to take the planning scheme that we want to put forward. We'll go back for approval. So I think at that time we'd be appropriate.
So in other words, wait until they come back to us. It may not be necessary. Cross our fingers that it's not. Yeah, thank you, General Manager May. Okay, so further speakers before we go back to Councillor Shoemaker? Okay, we'll go to Councillor Shoemaker for closing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just having just refreshing my memory. There are many challenges and comments and feedback that we've received over a long period of time that I can confidently say has been considered in the planning scheme amendment. Just looking here, anything from a rural lifestyle block to areas around our airport. It has been really quite an extensive process, and I know I was sick at the first, I had COVID the first workshop, but I certainly participated in the second workshop and was really impressed, probably almost overwhelmed with the information that Council has been given to digest around this process. I do agree, I think the community consultation piece is important, and as I said in my open comments, I'm excited about the Minister giving us the leave to now go and have more conversations about this. I do agree with Councillor, certainly with General Manager O'May's comments, that we do have to be careful here that we're not customising our planning scheme to meet the interests of specific developers. And I think, we have to have the betterment and the growth of the South Burnett in mind. I am really excited about the agritourism opportunities around the tourism precinct in some of our existing winery country. I think there are just so many opportunities for this region that we have really tried the renewable energy provisions, land use codes. There has been a thorough review of our planning scheme, and I think this is a great starting point for us to progress these next steps in communicating and discussing it with the community once the Minister agrees that we're, on respectful of the state interests. So in closing, Mr Mayor, I certainly commend this to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Erkins, Councillor Potter, Henson, and we've got Councillor Jones. Those against? Councillor Otto and Councillor Duff. The motion has been carried 5 votes to 2. Thank you all. Okay, we'll now move on to 13.2, amendment for plumbing fees 2223. That's at page 332, Council, where from our committee meeting it has been recommended that Council amend its 2223 register of fees and charges to include the following. And I think I'll just leave it as presented there at page 333. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Potter? No? Any further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, Mr Mayor, just wanted to, I guess, acknowledge for our community the work that has gone through assessing these and examining these fees. And I guess this is all part of Council's ethos to try to streamline processes to make things easier for people who are undertaking a building project and certainly the construction of their home. And it's my understanding that this one standard fee for up to 15 fixtures in your home, or certainly a shed 5 fixtures, is a good way, a good compromise in terms of where we were at, and it's one mechanism that councils may take in to try to make things simpler for those submitting applications and certainly those following inspections. So certainly just commend the recommendation to the chamber.
Further speakers? Happy to go to the vote, Councillor Potter. Yep. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we're up to 13.3, foot and mouth disease public statement at 334. From the committee meeting, it is recommended that Council release a public statement calling on the federal government to temporarily suspend all travel between Australia and any sites known to have active foot and mouth disease, and calls on all other councils nationally to support this motion. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Henson? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, we've got a few more dot points here on our agenda, which I will certainly comment on in some of those, but temporarily suspend all travel. As we know, there's, in my opinion, not enough being done in this space, which I'll allude to on 13.6. But yeah, I'd like to, just for the chamber and any public that are taking note, and certainly media outlets, temporarily suspend all the travel between Australia and any sites known. I'm just astounded at what is happening with this FMD, and certainly they've now brought in the lumpy skin disease. You know, I think I would further that by saying that temporarily suspend all travel, but I think also needs to be noted in relation to COVID, we have quarantine rules in place for COVID, and I think it seriously should be stressed, and my personal feeling on this, and within the industry, you'll hear it every day in social media, we can impose 5 and 7 day quarantines on COVID. I personally believe that that should be seriously contemplated in relation to travel. If they're not going to suspend travel to and from these destinations that are affected, I seriously would like to think that they consider that quarantine should be contemplated as well, like foot bars, and I'll allude a little more in 13.6 when we get to our biosecurity, but I'd just like to note that I think certainly that is another option and a step in the right direction, that quarantine, if it can be done with COVID, and this COVID will be nothing to this. So that's my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I know we had thorough conversations about this at the Standing Committee meeting, certainly have been following the media. It is good to see the federal government has put some funding packages together to try to stop the spread of the virus in barley. I don't disagree that I think in the spirit of protecting our livestock industry across Australia, I think it would it does call for suspending all travel between Australia and Bali at this, and certainly Indonesia at this point in time. I just had a question in terms of the discussions that we had last meeting and the media statements and things that have been made. And certainly I know, Mayor Otto, you've reached out to the Director General of DAF. I just was wondering, have we received any feedback or intel around whether our call or our message has been heard, and any indication as to what may happen from here on out is probably a question perhaps for you, Mayor Otto, and certainly Councillor Henson. I know you've put a lot of effort into this as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I might just address it from what I've got at least, and then I think we'll go to Councillor Henson to wrap up, unless there's any other speakers and can address any feedback you've got, Councillor Henson. But I haven't had any direct feedback, no. Did get a response from the Regional Director of DAF, and she's indicated to me that Biosecurity Queensland do have a body of material that they're going to be sending out, an education package that will be available to distribute throughout the community, and particularly to livestock producers, in terms of education and awareness around what you can do to protect yourself. So there's that package coming out. It should be released, well, if not now, very soon. It may have already come out. And I have asked Linda to contact Biosecurity Queensland just to confirm when that's coming, and to also see if we can facilitate with the head of Biosecurity Queensland a forum in conjunction with the Ag Network, as we talked about. So that's probably all I've got at this stage in terms of feedback, but no other feedback from government at this stage, Councillor, no. Any other speakers before we go to Councillor Henson to add? Yeah, so we'll go back to Councillor Henson to wrap up. And Councillor Henson,
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, quickly.
Information you've got? Yeah,
Look, there is and there's going to be an online meeting, and I just was flicking through paperwork. I haven't got it with me, but it's just not hard to find, I can tell you, through social media outlets. In far as conversation and any response, pathetic, absolutely pathetic. We have industry leaders and our politicians and different, and I won't go into that because I'll say something won't be acceptable in this chamber, but no, it's they're pussyfooting around, and again I'll allude to this in 13.6. But no, Mr Mayor, as far as I'm concerned, within the industry, there's a lot of conversation out there, a huge amount of conversation, and I just reiterate and stress that the primary producers of our country are the most diligent and produce the most healthy and best produce in some of it in the world, and they're implementing and trying to implement upon us as me being one, and many others in this chamber are as well, to take the lead on this. Well, I'm sorry, it's too late when it gets to us, and we've got our plans in place, and with our biosecurity, and I'll allude to that as I keep saying in 13.6. And 13.6, for those that are waiting with anticipation, is foot and mouth disease biosecurity plan. So, Mr Mayor, no, I have not received enough information that's relevant to share in this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Let's go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.4, again, foot and mouth disease. 335 on the agenda, recommendation from committee, South Burnett Regional Council, release a public statement on foot and mouth disease, and General Manager O'May and Councillor Henson be delegated to work on the implementation of a program for public warning and educational notices across the South Burnett and relevant industry sites around the region, and that Council reach out to the LGAQ at ALGA to develop a state and national advocacy position and seek advice as how collectively we can work together and act now. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Henson. Happy to go straight to Councillor Henson. Councillor Potter on this one. Again, we'll go back to you. Thank you, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And yeah, work in progress, and certainly a question on notice with Manager O'May. As every day goes by, there's plenty of commentary around this, and there's a lot of work. I guess a question I can just direct, and happy to take it on notice, in relation to literature and what we've talked about and signage. Where might we be at that just at this present time?
Thank you, General Manager.
Through Mr Mayor. Yeah, so we have received some initial advice from the State Disaster Coordination Centre, basically, but it really is just that high level information that's floating around about foot and mouth disease. So yeah, we just do need to follow up with LGAQ as far as trying to get a consistent messaging. So there is information around there, but so yeah, we've really just received that the generic information that is being distributed about foot and mouth disease, lumpy. So yeah, there's I think there was something else they included as well, another disease, lumpy skin and something else. But yeah.
So yeah, we'll stay with we'll come back to Councillor Henson to wrap up, but first, Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Hang on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's probably appropriate that I just give Councillor Henson an opportunity. I'll just prompt his memory in regards. It's probably an appropriate time, Councillor, to let the people know what's happening at the Roma and Charters Towers, sale yards and all that sort of stuff as far as cattle numbers and restrictions and all that. I think that's a very pertinent point and just drives home the significance and the effect it's having on our rural people. It is the backbone of our country.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jones. We'll let Councillor Henson wrap up. But before we do so, any further speakers before Councillor Henson addresses the issue with the cattle sales? Yeah, Councillor Erkins.
I know that there's been a lot of talk about controlling it with tourists, making sure that they, disinfect and all that. But there was actually someone put a post up this morning, so they had come through, and they reported to the security at the airport that they had been in contact. Was there somewhere they could disinfect shoes and and they were told no, go straight through. So I don't really think that is
Now, Councillor,
process properly.
so this person's indicating that they came from an infected site. Right. Well, that's very concerning to hear, isn't it? Before we go back to Councillor Henson, General Manager May, have we seen anything from Biosecurity Queensland yet come to Council in terms of those public information packs that they're supposed to be getting out? Because my understanding was from the regional director that they were very close to being distributed out to councils.
Yeah, through the chair. No, I haven't seen that yet. We've just really seen the statement from DAF via the State Disaster Coordination Centre, but I haven't seen the packs yet.
Well, through my office, we'll continue to follow up with Biosecurity Queensland to see if we can establish that forum. It's a Teams meeting with the head of Biosecurity Queensland to ask some of these hard questions about what are they doing and what's coming. So we'll continue to work on that as a matter of priority. Okay, sorry, Councillor Henson, we'll go back to you to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Jones. This is what's being bandied out in the local communities, and I'm not necessarily going to name particular destinations. Can I just, this week alone with foot and mouth disease, and Councillor Shoemaker has said we previously, without wanting to put the fear of God into people, well, I can assure you we need to put the fear of God into people. In Gracemere this week, 5,200 head of cattle. Charters Towers, 2,673. Dalby, 6,075. Roma, 10,593. Now, if anyone's been to the Roma sale yards, 10,000 head of cattle out there is massive. There is talk on the street, and this is not gospel, but because of this potential catastrophe to this country, that sale yards and operators and agents and some, and like I said, this is public opinion in certain circles, that they are going to stop and limit numbers to sale yards because of the mass fear. Now, this chamber knows in an email I sent yesterday that I took the unprecedented stand myself as a primary producer. I sold cattle because I'm not prepared to shoot them. Now,
take your time, Councillor.
excuse me. I do not think matter of breathing. I do not think this country is aware of what this epidemic could mean. It has the potential to absolutely ruin this country. Pardon me. I saw the sheep industry in the 80s shoot sheep. Thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of sheep in Victoria, unmarketable. Put them in a hole and bury them. We're going to experience that if foot and mouth come to this country. And we have leaders and advocates of our industry that are sitting on their hands doing absolutely nothing with this. And I mean nothing. And can I just bear with me, please, Mr. Mayor, for a moment as I restart my computer. So please, apologies.
Yeah, take your time, Councillor. Thank you.
And I want to read a statement and a release that's been put out in relation to foot and mouth disease. Of the little action that's been taken and how this buck is being passed on to us as primary producers. Now, in an industry, and it's not just the cattle industry, it is the sheep industry, it is the pork industry, the goat industry, as we know, and we go round and round and round in circles. We're giving money to Indonesia for vaccines. There's that many strains of foot and mouth disease, they don't even know which one it is at the moment. So the vaccines, as much as they want to paint that as a pretty picture, it's ridiculous. We have, as Councillor Erkins has alluded to, it's on social media, and he's a primary producer, might I add, and a very sensible and intelligent man that got to the airport and was just, noted it, ticked it on his forms, no, you'll be right, and walked on through. Now, this is just ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. As I stated earlier on, we can impose all the restrictions and mandates and regulations on COVID. What's that cost to our country and our human race in the world, not just Australia? But for the sake of a minute and time might save 9 in this community and this country, our beautiful country, not suspending or not even at least issuing quarantine on travellers is beyond me as a primary producer. We've put people in isolation with COVID for 5 and 7 days and sometimes longer. If we can't afford and if people can't appreciate the catastrophe that they could possibly bring to this country and to themselves, and me personally, I put a post on social media a couple of days ago, so I have been absolutely smashed. You think I get emotional, you should see the phone calls and hear the phone calls and the correspondence I'm getting from people out there that, what can we do? Well, it's too late what we can do if it comes to here, and we've said that before. The fact that it'll have flow-on effects and our biosecurity rules and regulations are wonderful, and the primary producers are the ones at the forefront that implement it the most. And here we have government and leaders of this country aren't enforcing those to the fullest degree. I'm absolutely dismayed and shattered at the fact that people are sitting on their hands with this. I don't want to be an alarmist, but we talk of our primary production in this country, second to none in the world. We talk of the life we live, and this morning we saw 11 people welcome to our country with citizenship. A wonderful new start for them, and congratulations to them, which we could put our country back in a third world situation in relative to where some of those people perhaps have even come from. I find it astounding that we're sitting here as a council members and we're getting nothing from them. We've had 3 items on our agenda with foot and mouth disease public statements, foot and mouth disease 13.4, foot and mouth disease forums. Now we're on biosecurity. There's a simple fix to this, there really is, and it's not being implemented. And at what cost, I'm not sure. There'll be a cost, all right. I was thinking this morning driving into town about our recreational facilities and all our recreations. It affects absolutely everything across the board. And sorry, Mr Mayor, if I'm going on and I'm going to run out of time, but I'll bang on about this until something happens, and I'm sorry, and I'm not sorry. I don't make any apologies for it. I talk recreation like we think of all the wonderful things that goes on, not just in our community, but in the entire country. You won't have barbecues at your sporting events. Where's the meat going to come from? Your little entities that rely on that to make money for their community clubs and groups and everything across the board. And I thought recreation, well, it's going to change. You can change that. You can take the rec out of it and put creation, because that's what people are going to have to be, seriously creative to survive in this. But Mr Mayor, without going on any further, and as you see, I do get emotional about this, and I took those steps myself personally yesterday. Pretty tough call, but one that I'm comfortable with. That being said, and Councillor Jones alluded to with the sales and that, for sales to be cautious about restricting cattle numbers, that means there's going to be a mass exodus of people wanting to sell stock because of the fear of having to shoot them. Now, when I had this conversation with my agent a couple of days ago, in the past 2 to 3 years, we've experienced the most wonderful trend, upward trend of prices within our livestock industry. Me, myself personally, I'm happy to be quoted. In 2020, $4.40 for my cattle that I sold at market that particular time. The following year, $6.51, and this year, $8.50. Those same cattle that I'll be marketing today, and that was on the 22nd of March, that $8.50, go back to 2017, 18 and 19, we couldn't give cattle away. We couldn't put them on a truck. We couldn't sell them. There was no produce because of drought. That market today, and I'll be happy to stand here and quote these figures again next week or tomorrow, suggested that from $8.50, and I don't expect $8.50 or $6.50 continually. I'm happy to get anything that we can get that we can survive on. But I can tell you, and I will pass this on when I find out this afternoon, but I'm expecting that the price of my cattle that are in prime condition, that are in the markets today, will be 30% of what they were on the 22nd of March. 30%. That's what I'm expecting. That's the effect it's having on this industry. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. That concludes the debate on this matter, on this particular item. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carry unanimously. Madam CEO, could I please ask on behalf of our council that we act promptly to implement the recommendation here, the adoption of council, the resolution of council, in relation to following up with Biosecurity Queensland on programs for public warning and educational notices, and secondly, reaching out to the LGAQ and ALGA for national advocacy, state national advocacy, to the political sphere on this matter. We really need to pull as much collective bargaining power together as we can to address this satisfactorily, as an outcome from that resolution. Thank you very much. Okay, rightio. So 13.5. The next one on this matter is the forum, and I'll just get that there, Bree. So from the committee meeting, it's recommended that council work with industry stakeholders to facilitate a regional forum, including invitation to the regional director of DAF, Queensland Ministers for Agriculture and Tourism, and the Federal Minister for Agriculture to be based in Kingaroy. Do we have a mover? Yeah, Councillor Potter. Seconder, Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you. Councillor Potter, did you want to speak to this one? You're happy? Yeah. Look, I just want to say a couple of things here. I would like to also see included in the motion, if we can just, with councillors' consent, include the Biosecurity Queensland representative. After DAF, a Biosecurity Queensland representative. They seem to have more information than the actual DAF office at this stage. Ag Force Queensland representative. And I'm happy to include there whatever advice from Council and Councillor Henson as to who else we should include. And the reason I say that is just, I've just read an article now that AgForce have come out and made a statement today, the CEO of AgForce Queensland, that they support the government's position. They see no need for footbaths at airports and that they're very comfortable that the government is managing the risk appropriately from the assessments that they've done. Now, I don't know who, and I don't want to criticise AgForce, I know they do a great job, but I would like to have an AgForce rep come here and hear the stories that Councillor Henson is sharing about the impact that he's seeing on the ground with the livestock industry, because we need all parties working together on this. And I understand that AgForce have a role to play in this space. So I could be on the wrong track, but I'm keen to hear from you, Councillor Henson, on your thoughts about getting some clarity and some information and involvement from those groups. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, let me tell you, within the industry, they might be wanting to come with security because their lack of response. And can I just, Mr. Mayor, read out a paragraph in relation to foot and mouth disease. The Australian government is responsible for the management and protection of Australia's borders and has strengthened biosecurity measures in response to FMD and LSD outbreaks. LSD is lumpy skin disease in Indonesia. This includes increased traveller interventions for flights arriving from Indonesia, placement of detector dogs at Cairns, additional signage informing travellers of FMD risk, and enhanced screening of non-letter mail from Indonesia. The Australian government is also providing active support to Indonesia's response to FMD with 1 million FMD vaccine doses, 435,000 LSD vaccine doses, and expertise on emergency animal disease management and biosecurity. Fair income. I mean, fair income. Sniffer dogs in foot and mouth disease. They're refusing to put baths in airports. I am just, honestly, you've seen my emotion. I am just speechless. I am furious. I am ropeable about this. I cannot believe, and yes, Mr. Mayor, our leading bodies, be it AgForce and NFF, they have done some good work in the previous, but they're letting this country down seriously, and I'm not one bit apologise for that. Am I a member of AgForce? I was, but I am not now, and I can rest assure you now, memberships in AgForce just might diminish. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And of course, we have a role as councillors to tell it as it is. And thank you for doing that, Councillor, showing that very clearly and very unashamedly putting forward your points of view. You've certainly got a responsibility to do that for the livestock producers in this region and also for the broader community. So I congratulate you for doing that so with such courage and determination and passion, because someone needs to stand up for our community on this. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't disagree with anything that has been said. I know this is, an enormous risk to the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of people in our region, certainly across Australia. And I empathise with Councillor Henson. I know how much he loved his cattle. I did go out and sneak a peek the other week on our way to Chinchilla, and I can say they were beautiful cattle. You should get what they're worth at the farm gate, and I hate that about how the industry fluctuates all the time. It makes it always hard for the farmer. I do definitely agree. I think the thing with this forum is it's an opportunity for education, for sharing information, awareness, and certainly for advocating for better. And from everything that I've read, I understand, early detection is key. So anything we can do to certainly equip our community, arm our community with information is important. I just wanted to bring it to the Chamber's attention that I am a member of the South Burnett Grazing Network, and that they are having tomorrow here in the hall reception room from 6 o'clock. They've got a guest speaker, Mr. John Higgins, the Senior Inspector from Animal Biosecurity and Welfare Department of Agricultural and Fisheries, who will provide an update on foot and mouth disease and other exotics, is what the invitation says. It's my understanding he has actually just attended specific training for this purpose. And I do think, I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. I'll certainly be attending. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to hear from some of our local graziers and also to hear firsthand some of the information that is being provided through DAF. And yes, certainly I think, I guess my only question around this forum, I know in my own experiences in a couple of forums that I've now been a strong participant in organising, I'm just wondering who's actually going to coordinate and lead this, because there is quite a bit of work in actually bringing a forum like this together, and you do need to have a program and, you know, make sure that it does deliver value for everybody in attendance. I think this is certainly a problem that you could certainly get stuck into, and I know watching the news and the media around what's currently happening in Indonesia, you know, everyone's very aware of that. So I'm just mindful how we deliver best value for the residents of our region with this forum, and certainly how we support advocating our position strongly and developing that strong working relationship. So I guess my only question to the team, certainly to council staff, perhaps GMO May, just with your resources, how are we actually equipped to pull this together rather quickly? And, you know, is there support for this? Because certainly I know firsthand it can be a real challenge organising some of these things.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. GMO, just if we could also answer that in the context of 13.6, once, and we'll go back to we'll go across to Councillor Jones shortly. 13.6 talked about working with BioSecurity to facilitate an ag network meeting. So there could be some crossover there. I know Councillor Duff's been doing some work with Alan Broome. So I think we'll go around the room on this one. But first of all, updates from you, General Manager Bay, to answer Councillor Shoemaker's question. Then we'll go back to Councillor Jones and across to Councillor Duff so we can get an update on what work is happening out there on the ground. Do we need to lead it? If so, who would do so and how would we pull that together?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I certainly see us advocating and supporting. I don't see us leading the forum. I have concerns if we have our own forum and host it, and then Biosecurity Queensland and the lead agencies that are managing this have forums, then people might get confused. Or we've gone to the council one, but it's different. So yeah, I certainly think we have a role in coordinating that. The Biosecurity in Queensland and DAF to come here, but they would be the lead agencies in providing the expert speakers and the information from the thing. So between us, BioSecurity, who's sort of very close with the Ag Network, I think it is a matter of us supporting whatever we need to bring those things here.
Yeah, thanks very much. You're comfortable with that, Councillor Shoemaker? We'll stay with you.
Yes, thank you. I definitely agree with that position. That has been my thinking. I think we really do need to use, you know, the resources available for us, and certainly make sure we're doing all that we can to make it easy for these people to come into our region and to discuss what is clearly a giant threat to our economy and our well-being as a community. So thank you, Manager Peter.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager. And we may need, just once we've had this conversation, we may need to just look at tweaking that motion then in light of your advice that we may certainly be the inviting party, but that DAF with Biosecurity Queensland may need to be the lead agency in actually delivering an invitation for them to deliver a regional forum. We'll go to Councillor Jones and then we'll go back to Councillor Potter and Duff. Councillor Jones, your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to highlight and bring it to everyone's attention. Aussie Land and Livestock were organising a webinar tonight between 6 and 7 o'clock, and their initial link had to be cancelled because they had over 1,000 people jam onto it, and they've started created a new Teams live event. Has now been created to allow for a greater number of attendees. Registration is no longer required. Now, the webinar agenda is an overview of industry response from John McKillop. He's the independent chair of Red Meat Advisory Council. There'll be an update given from the Ag Minister, Fiona Simpson, President of National Farmers Federation. Also an update on biosecurity response, Dr. Chris Parker, National LSD FMD Preparedness Coordinator from DAF, and what would happen in the event of a FMD LSD outbreak by Dr. Samantha Allen. She's the General Manager of Emergency Preparedness, Animal Health and Biosecurity, Animal Health Australia, and then question and answers. So that's on a site that you can get on, a Teams live event. You don't have to register anymore tonight between 6 and 7 o'clock for anybody out there that's maybe online, or if we can spread that word somehow to promote that event as well.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. We'll continue the conversation. I think we'll probably come back to an agreed position at the end on this. Councillor Potter, and then we'll go back to Councillor Duff.
I'll speak after because I'll have the last word then, yeah.
Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I've been working with Alan Broome on the back of this recommendation that is being discussed around the Ag Network meeting, and he's been talking to John Higgins, who has just come back from who's done like an updated course on what's happening with the foot and mouth disease, and so we were looking at getting him on the 4th of August, so that was the Thursday afternoon, the 4th of August, to actually run an Ag Network meeting at Wandai. We felt that was a central location, probably the Wandai Town Hall, but that's a tentative just on the back of what we were discussing here, and but that was to more support our local producers on the ground, and had a lot of people from the industry, like the agents, shared concerns. So Alan was really keen to work with Biodo and through that Ag Network to get that happening. So I just wanted to flag that.
Okay, so that work's happening as well, 4th of August. Thanks, Councillor Duff. And I guess there's two elements to this. One's the political advocacy, and the other element is the community information and education. And so I guess we've got to look at those two carefully, because if we have a forum and we get the blending of the two, it could end up being one where it all becomes about political advocacy, and we might lose the opportunity to do the education information stuff. So we might have to be careful about separating those two objectives. Yeah, you've listened to this conversation, Councillor Potter. What are your thoughts in terms of what we've heard from the floor today?
Look, I love the idea of trying to get them up to actually have a discussion with us about foot and mouth disease. It'd be great if they would come. But good luck, I think, because I think at this stage they're probably not going to come up. But I'm hoping that your persuasion, Mr Mayor, will get them to come up this way, so it is possible. As a person who doesn't have cattle, I do see the impact it's going to have in our community if it does come here. With the dairy industry, the beef, the cattle, we've got buffalo here, we've got goats here, we've got camels. I mean, it just pigs, yeah. So I mean, it's just the amount of industry that we will lose in the whole area is just it just is astounding that they're not doing enough in my eyes. And to think that it's not only that industry, then you've got the overflow industries on from that, with your dairy industry and everything like that. So, the ramifications of this are far and wide. And I really do think that what Councillor Henson said, that they haven't actually thought about this in depth, is true, because they haven't. They haven't actually sat down and say, hey, well, if this does come here and it does spread, what are we going to do? We're going to stop the deer from, the wild deer from running from property to property, going to stop the wild boar. Good luck to that, because it's not going to happen, and it will spread like wildfire. We need to do something now. So so the sooner the better, Mr Mayor.
What's Council's appetite for blending the two? So if the Ag Network have got something proposed for the 4th of August, would Council prefer to jump on the back of that and work with Alan Broome and the Ag Network and Biodo to support that in terms of advocating to DAF, Biosecurity and Ag Force for representatives? Thoughts on that, Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I think that is the right approach, being that there is so many different levers to this, and I do think collaboration is the key, particularly when we're faced with an issue such as this one, and agree with General Manager O'May's comments that we don't want to be duplicating things. So I guess my suggestion is we amend this motion maybe with a combination of the motion below, Mr Mayor, in terms of, that council, maybe it is partner instead of work. if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, remove work 3 with Baido to facilitate or to support the facilitation of an ag network meeting and the involvement of industry stakeholders and take out to facilitate a regional forum, including an invitation to Regional Director, Biosecurity, Ag Force, Queensland Ministers. Something like that, because I'm very mindful, Mr. Mayor, as you've said, of the advocacy position of council, and that, you know, a letter from the mayor is the appropriate, can be a very big supporting mechanism for these groups to get some of this participation. Baido has such an incredible reputation, does so much work in our community. I don't doubt for a second of their relationships either to make this happen. Certainly welcome Councillor Duff's feedback and that of yourself, just to make sure that we've got this right, because I don't think we're a lead. We're certainly a partner, and I think I'd like to continue to see our council do all it can to raise awareness and support the function of some of these things. I know the Baido Ag Network meeting where we discussed the Great Barrier Reef regulations, there was the town hall was overflowing with people, so I think certainly they're the right mechanism to work with here, and welcome your feedback.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Would we just, I think that's a sensible approach. Keen to hear from fellow councillors, but if we were to take out to be based in Kingaroy, so that if they do proceed with their 4th of August forum at Wando, we'd be looking to support that. That'd be the intention. Yeah, okay, that's fine then. We just take that out then, Bree. Thank you. That's good. Okay, further speakers. Let's open up the floor again. Councillor Duff, if we that would effectively mean we wouldn't proceed with 13.6. We'd just blend the two as recommended by Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think that's very good, because then that will add weight to the event that Baido and the Ag Network and Alan Broome and I have been working on. So that just have the one event and try and just include some of those parties, like you've suggested, Ag Force and representatives from the Queensland Agriculture and Tourism, etc. Whoever we can get along to that will be certainly great. But we've certainly got John Higgins lined up in any case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Potter. I'll just, in the event of that, fully supportive of that motion, Councillor Potter and Councillor Shoemaker. We can go round and round here all day, but there needs to be action taken, and action taken much more than what's happening at the moment. In the event of us not doing 13.6, that's fine, but as Councillor Potter alluded to, and I will continue to bang on about this as to what it affects, we are coming into the season where bull sales happen from now on. In the event of foot and mouth disease, there will be no bull sales. There will be no cattle sales in any shape or form. There will be no pigs. There will be no sheep. There will be no goat. Go down the path again, there will be no camp drafts. Recreation sporting facilities will be affected immensely. Continue on from there. Contractors, be it haymakers, silage, transport companies, there will be none of them, because they won't be able to supply their produce to anywhere. Who's going to want to buy a bale of hay? Because the feedlots will all be shut. The silage won't be able to be chopped because there'll be no cattle in feedlots. There'll be no working dogs. You say working dogs, how does it affect working dogs? You won't have any sheep. There won't be any need for any working dogs, sheep dogs. There won't be any need for any cattle dogs. The implications are just massive, and I don't think people are fully aware. We talk about COVID, and COVID has been a blight on our society and our world for the past 3 years. Let me tell you, COVID is just nothing to this, absolutely nothing to this. This is the potential to take us, and I said it and I'll say it again, to bring us into a third world country status. And the implications that go down the line, there won't be things that you'll be able to enjoy that you do today. I've mentioned before, you won't be able to go and get a toasted ham, cheese and tomato sandwich Will you go down to your local coffee shop and have a nice latte? Probably not. Your pubs to go to restaurants and meals, cafes. And my purpose of when I made the comment about recreation and creation, you're certainly going to have to be fairly creative, because you won't be getting in your supermarkets, you won't be getting in your pubs, clubs, restaurants, cafes, what you're experiencing today. On that, in relation to biosecurity, can I just, and I'm happy to take this as a question on notice to our managers and staff. With biosecurity and within our sale yards, and I'll refer to the Coolabunga sale yards, and the question be, our facility there for a washdown bay, now the washdown bay there is extremely important to our transport operators and the likes around the district and our community. With the implement or the suggestion of foot and mouth, I've been approached by operators, transport owners. We've changed the pricing of that facility out there, which no one has a problem with. This is not the question I'm asking here. The question I ask is, that facility is coin operated at the moment. Now, I appreciate when an operator goes to there and wants to wash his truck down, they would previously spend anywhere from $10 to $20 with coin in that facility. Having put our fees and charges up to which they are, and I reiterate that no one is complaining about that, but I would like to put the question on notice that we investigate the pricing of perhaps either a card reader or a token system there that takes away that facility for cash, because a truck driver to turn up there with $50 to $100 or $2 coins in his pocket is not going to happen. That being said, my fear is that that facility then will lend itself, if there's a cash and a pool of cash at that facility, it lends itself to vandalism and theft and degradation of that particular facility. So my question is, and happy on notice, that Council looks into furthering development of that washdown bay facility at the Coolabunga sale yards and see whether the costings and the implementation there, and I know we have difficulty with connectivity there, with Wi-Fi and whatnot, but perhaps there's other avenues that we can explore there. So if that question could be taken on notice, Mr Mayor, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. General Manager O'May, at the request of Council, can we have that brought back to the next Community Standing Committee meeting as a report there, please? I think just in terms of the urgency of the matter, it's a very good point Councillor Henson raises, and the Regional Director of DAF actually did raise this with me, saying, have you got convenient, accessible washdown bays in your region? So, yeah, it's a really good point. That'd be great. Thanks, General Manager O'May. Let's go to the vote on this one. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor, I'll now move a procedural motion that item 13.6 be removed from the agenda as it has been dealt with in 13.5. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Henson. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. That'll take us on to 14.1, and we'll try and push through. I know lunch is overdue, but we'll try and push through with the leave of council. 14.1, emergency after hours call service and LDMG overview at 3:38. Where we do have a report. Get to 3:38. If we can get that up, Bree. I've seen we've lost my pages here. 3:38. Thanks, Bree. Recommend that we note the report and that the CEO engage with Council's after-hours call centre provider in relation to Council's concerns regarding delays in service during wet weather events. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Councillor Potter, thank you. Speakers, we're comfortable with that. We'll leave it with the CEO to follow up on. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.1, lease Kingaroy Tennis and District Association at 340. Thanks, Bree. We have the recommendation there from the committee as presented, items 1 and 2, in terms of entering into a 10-year lease with the Kingaroy Tennis Association. Do we have a mover as presented? Councillor Potter, second. Councillor Henson, thank you. Any speakers to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.2, Wandai Pool Enhancement Project at 341. From the committee, there's a recommendation that Council allocate additional project funds of $300,000 to the Wandai Memorial Pool Enhancement Project from building restricted cash, and that the budget adjustment be included in the 22-23 financial year's first quarter budget review. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second. Councillor Henson. Speakers, Councillor Duff first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just support this project because we got the funding, but there's obviously a need for that additional money, which is always, as Deputy Mayor Jones has said before, these things are blowing out because of the current circumstances we have. So yes, I'm just really keen to have this supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Erkins, then we'll go to Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you.
While I am supportive of the motion, I really think that we need to take notice. That's a 50% increase in costs. And, you know, we all talk about what we can afford and what we can't afford. I'm not fully aware of why that is, but I really think that 50% increase is a huge cost. So I just want to draw councillors' attention to it for future projects.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shoemaker.
Just a point of order, Mr Mayor. I was of the understanding it was a 30% increase in project costs. It was originally a $600,000 project that will now be a $900,000 project. I just want to confirm that I've got that correct. Yes, General Manager O'May, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's a 30%
Oh, no.
increase.
Sorry, Councillor. It is 50%. Sorry. Yeah. 300 of the 600 is the 50%.
I thought that was always the BBRF grant was a co-contribution grant. No?
GMMA, can you just clarify
explain
for
this
us?
me?
Thank you.
I thought we'd always signed up this project where it would be half and half. So it was my understanding that this project was scoped for $600,000, which was a $300,000 contribution by council and a $300,000 contribution by the feds through the Building Better Regions grant. And then, so, you know, another $300,000 is a 30% increase on the projected costs.
Thanks, Jeremy. Jeremy.
Yeah, I suppose, you're both looking at two different, through the chair. So it's the, 50% increase in our costs and 30% increase on the project costs,
Yes.
I suppose. Yeah, so two
Different
statistics
yes.
that,
Just important we don't, that it's clear in the community, because certainly there's been heated discussion about projects blowing out in the past, and you know, I do not believe this is the case. I think everything has been done to responsibly manage the project budget and the scope and try to deliver the outcome for the Wondai community, despite the challenges in the construction industry currently faced. I just wanted to make it a note that, pools, particularly in regional areas like ours, if I've learned anything over the last 2 years, they're a real challenge. I'm so mindful that Wondai has a population of over 1,900 people, and how important a swimming pool is in terms of learn to swim and lifestyle. And certainly with an ageing community and people who need physiotherapy and these sorts of things, exercise, well-being, pools are such important infrastructure. I do think for us as a council, this demonstrates our commitment to rejuvenating regional pools and looking at the benefits of a well-designed facility in an effort to improve our services, certainly increase social connectedness and support better use of community assets. But I did want to bring it, I guess, to council's attention that, yes, and certainly to our community's attention, that infrastructure like this is such a challenge when we have things breaking down, underinvestment, because it's a real challenge to support the maintenance of facilities like this. I'm really excited about this project for the Wondai community. It demonstrates certainly council's commitment to all of our towns across the region and supporting the livability of the South Burnett for our residents and our ratepayers. So by all means, I don't never spend a single dollar of council's money without really thinking about it. It just would be such a shame to give the funds back and not deliver on this project. And I think we all signed up to see it done, and really looking forward to the outcomes of these are simple improvements. You know, shade for mums and bubs during swimming lessons is not a big ask. Some simple splash play that has, you know, I know my initial visions of what we could produce have been certainly toned down a little, but you know, simple things like this make an enormous difference to communities like Wondai and across the South Burnett. So by all means, I'm supportive of this. I also recognise the opportunity to use the pool triathlons and things to support the many running events happening in Wondai. So I think it's a really exciting project and looking forward to seeing shovels in the ground.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henson, sorry, Councillor Erkins, if you could just clarify your statements. Did you want to extend response to that? Yeah, thank you.
My statement was, it's a 50%, the project was 600,000. We're now wanting to spend another 50% of the original contribution. I understand that 300 is actually a third of 900, but it is half of what we spent. As I said, I'm fully supportive of it. I think the pools are important. I think shade for families are also important, but I'm also aware of how hard it is to get money for our Tipperary flat.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you, Councillor. A separate matter. Further speakers? Okay, Councillor Duff to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, just agree that this is a very, very exciting project for Wondai, and just really keen to support the additional funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, tourism industry and entities identification at 342, and recommendation from the committee is that South Pacific Regional Council investigate the costings to fund a workshop with VSB to look for further promotion of our tourism industry and entities identification and the safety of our country with foot and mouth disease on our doorstep. Okay, is anyone prepared to move that one? Councillor Henson, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter, thank you. Speakers? Councillor Henson, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, there's a little bit of work to do in this space, and certainly with that closing sentence there with foot and mouth disease, I think certainly this is on the tip of everybody's tongue, as I keep banging on about, but no more so than with our tourism operators and enterprise. So I think this is probably, in relation to foot and mouth on our doorstep, I think this is an important conversation and something that look forward to working with VSB with. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you. I think by all means, I think I understand the intent and probably just proposing perhaps a change to the motion. I'm not sure about investigating the costings to fund a workshop with VSB. I was thinking more, perhaps we need to invite VSB in to have a discussion with them and then consider what strategy it is that we're putting in place and then investigate the costings of that, because I think we could possibly adopt this motion without really giving our staff a clear understanding of our intent. And I think maybe the intent here is to sit down with the VSB board and have a discussion with them. So, and then by all means, if we need develop a strategy and consider what funding and resources is needed then. So I guess I'd probably be asking you, Councillor Henson and Potter, to consider amending this motion to reflect that.
Thank you, Councillor. If we were to change it to say the council meets with VSB to consider options for or consider strategies perhaps, or options. I'm just trying to probably put into words what Councillor Shoemaker's intent is.
A strategy.
Consider a strategy. If we just go on the screen, we can ask Councillor Henson and Councillor Potter to have a look at that. Your thoughts on that, or feel free to put for any changes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and certainly support that, yes, meets with the VSB because they're the leaders and the drivers of this, of course, so they probably will have an opinion and take the lead on this as well. Yeah, no, I'm happy with that, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you.
Councillor Potter?
Happy with that, Mr. Mayor.
Good, thank you. So we now have the motion there. Any further speakers? Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, town brochures, 16.2 at 343. Recommendation from the committee is that council supports local business groups who wish to put together and fund their own town brochures that include council assets, and the Chief Executive Officer approve, where appropriate, the inclusion of council assets. We have a mover, Councillor Duff, a seconder, Councillor Potter. Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one is because we had a meeting with, or Councillor Henson and I and yourself, Mayor, were at a meeting at the Wandai Business Association. It was a breakfast and they raised concerns, and they have done for a long time, about their brochure. And also I have Proston also not happy with that they didn't get a brochure. So on that, that's hence the reason for this, because it's not every town that's concerned about their brochures, just Wandai and Proston that I'm aware of. So the idea was that they could work with the CEO if they wanted, because it's more about not local businesses promoting their assets, it's more about the council brochure that would go into the visitor information centres. So they wanted to put together something a bit different for Wandai, like featuring more of the Wandai assets from council, like the rail trail, for example, which wasn't included in their brochure. To put together a brochure working with the CEO was the intention of this particular motion. So I'm hoping that I can get the support of the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers? No. Happy to go to the vote, Councillor? No. Yep, good. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 17.1 at 3:44. Recommendation is that this report. Sorry, Bree, you've got that there for me. List of Delegate Authority report. Sorry, that the Delegate Authority report be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second, Councillor Henson. Speakers to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 17.2. We have there the recommendation that the list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Everyone's getting tired. Councillor Henson, thank you. Any speakers on that one? No, we go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, Councillor, the next section is our confidential section, where it's recommended that Council considers the confidential reports listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with Section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012. 19.1, financial hardship rates application on the assessment number as stated under Section 254J-I, and 19.2, waiving of waste collection charges on the assessment number as stated under 254J-I. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconder. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll now close out into confidential. Thank you, Bree. Okay, welcome back to Open Council. 19.1, recommendation is as presented on page 4. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second, Councillor Erkins. Speakers to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.2, recommendation is that Council agree to waive the waste collection and interest charges totalling $815.79 sitting on assessment number as stated in accordance with page 7. Do we have a mover? Councillor Erkin, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers, those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. That concludes the meeting. Have a great rest of day. Thank you.